let's go live now. I should link this on YouTube. Let me link this on YouTube. Because this is how life goes. Fuck your feelings. I do what I want. So, hi. It's been a bit. How are y'all doing? So, just to let y'all know, I'm probably gonna be the only one that's interested in this. Because this is fucking documentary for a game and not like gameplay or anything like that. Am I sorry? No, not at all. But I will still watch it anyways because fuck your feelings. Oh, welcome to the stream reaction video. What the fuck is a reaction? We don't do reactions here, sir. We do watches here. We only do watches here. Anyways, without further ado, let's see what Valve is going to... Let's see this interesting history of Valve. Or interesting to me. I'm not sure how any others will feel. But no, I do what I want. Here we go. Slightly loud. No, that's just racist.
Since my childhood, a bit of urban exploration. So I love to
like,
break through a window of an abandoned factory or building or train station. So that's one of my hobbies used to be. What's on the roofs of buildings? You know, what's,
God, the world just looks so great with this shit.
Cellar and in a factory. We did a lot of work.
I miss when I could go on trains. It's racist, Cup. Clearly it's racist when you try to put reactors in watchers in the same category. Because reactors just like to steal content. Watches like to steal content with style.
You can just walk and see the broken textures and layers of paint and brick and history. And it was just so cool that I can.
I remember the last time I was on a train. It was like Christmas theme. We had Santa Day. It was funny.
I went to check it out last night.
When I was a wee little school.
And it just goes back, luckily, coincidentally,
so you're
to the exact same state where I shot it 25 years ago, actually.
Yeah. Valve may not cook enough games, but know what? That means they have less chances to get into controversy like other devs. Then again, their neglectfulness did get them in controversy for how they treated TF2. Okay, never mind. Let's just not pay attention to that. God, I remember when I watched the Half-Life 1 documentary. It was interesting. I like watching this sort of shit. I should watch more of these out of spite to people that are interested in this. Because, come on, aren't you interested in the hells and interesting tales that could happen behind your games? Don't you want to hear all the hardships, all the abuse, underpaid work hours, all the nightmares, all the fucking... Okay, I see why not many people do this, but at least Valve is wholesome enough to upload these. And be honest, because it can be dangerous as well. It's not Freeman G-Man, I'm stupid. Chapter 1, Raising the Bar.
So, one of the big challenges with Half-Life was
it's the funny man. It's the non-3 man.
We could actually make video games at all. Like, my background was operating systems and spreadsheets. Mike Harrington, who was the co-founder, had a similar background. He had a little more game experience than I did. But with Half-Life, you know, we were pretty sure we were going to fail. And then Half-Life was successful. It was like a lot more successful
absolutely
than we had
it was.
I
don't get the appeal, but it was absolutely successful.
Right? We didn't want to have a sophomore slump. We didn't want to be a one and done kind of company. So now we had the terrifying obligation to our customers and to our fans to somehow advance our game design skills, our technology.
Are you fucking with me?
All needed to.
Because I thought they were showing a thing on my monitor.
I think a bunch of us were really shocked by the success of Half-Life 1. We were this young, unproven company. I don't think any of us really knew what to expect.
God, I wish that were me.
I remember when we started working on Half-Life 2,
God,
we had
their
already
eyes
set
are
the bar
just
pretty
so
high for
red.
ourselves.
So
I forgot how flashes can make your eyes look demonic as shit.
Of the visibility that Half-Life
Is
created
Gabe
for us in the
wearing
industry
shorts?
to continue to
That's
hire
cursed.
the best
I
people
want
that
more
we
of
can find
it.
in the world. It just got easier. The bar didn't get any lower, but the fact that we had, it went from, hey, this weird dude who worked on operating systems wants to convince you he can run a game company to, oh, Half-Life won a bunch of awards, and now they're working on a sequel to that.
Even my first week, or my first day, was actually the going away party for Mike Harrington, the co-founder.
Yeah, I came to Valve when it was just tiny. We had 10 or so people. Dave and I grew up together in Louisiana, so
I wish I could have a successful game watch that could fucking watch this studio.
And during Half-Life, that kind of changed to a, maybe instead of that, the dream could be you come and work here at this one, with me.
Yeah, and I interviewed the day that Half-Life went gold, and I took the team photo of.
There's like an old photo of us. We broke a paper mache head crab and everything.
Yeah, I was freaking out.
Yeah.
I was actually working on a video game concept in high school, and I was seeking a mentor, and I got in touch with Mark Laidlaw at Valve. I guess it was the right time and right place, and quite a bit of luck, and I ended up getting an internship that way. I guess I was 17 at the time.
So you've got a whole company that's familiar with tools and a whole process, and then we just started over. Like, we rebuilt the tools and we rebuilt the engine. So we had this long period of time where we could sort of take our time on design. And so we spent a lot of time working on story and just trying to figure out how to make this thing bigger, like somehow more epic. And those discussions eventually led to this idea that, so in Half-Life 1, you open this portal, some strange rift to another dimension. And we thought, well, what if that broadcasts this signal to the universe that's like, oh, there's this planet there, it's free air and water. And so then we sort of came up with this idea of, well, there's this mega organization that's resource starved, and they're just gonna come and take it if they can.
How many years passed between? 6?
Yeah.
So I would say the first 2 years, we tried a lot of things. And a lot of those stories...
Yeah, right? Process can be like the toughest thing to understand what you want exactly.
Or any of that.
There was originally going to be three different alien races, like the bugs or religious ones, and the antlions actually came out of that bug race that was supposed to be a much bigger part of the game.
It had 3 alien races, the warrior aliens, the insect aliens, and the spy aliens. And it had like a pod-like city, which ended up being the closest thing to
would be
City
a
17.
mother.
In a lot of ways, it reminds me of
I wish Valve did this for other games as well, not just Half-Life, like Left 4 Dead 2, Left 4 Dead, all that shit.
I remember we were really ambitious at the beginning.
Actually, I don't think that would work
we designed,
because...
4 cities at one point?
It would
Prague,
be interesting,
Jerusalem, Chicago,
especially TF2,
Los Angeles, I
had a resurgence in popularity
base,
as
an
a
underwater base, an icebreaker
and
ship,
I think it's still
an
there.
airplane sequence
Can't remember,
crashed
but it's surely
into
still
a high-rise,
and
which
not to
we cut
justify
right
for
after
some sort
9/11.
of documentary.
We had several combine bases in the wasteland. We had the air exchange, which is where they were taking, the atmosphere from Earth. We had a train depot and so on. So we really obviously had to scale back.
You had
what we were
so
trying
many
to do,
ideas.
But, that's okay.
Scope creep is very dangerous. You should
I
not
saw it
let
almost
it
as
fuck
like
you up.
sophomore anxiety, maybe. Oh wow,
I'm still gonna have a lot of fucking.
We have to surpass
of it,
Half-Life,
but
and Half-Life
I'm gonna have a lot of scope creep up in my life, and it caused me to get overly ambitious with my ship. But still,
and we kept asking
if you
ourselves,
knew
and
at
Gabe
least,
kept
don't
asking,
let it
well, how does
consume
this
you.
happen?
That is a
Well,
no.
When you have a silent first-person narrator, you could tell people this is Gordon and throw that character into literally any environment and say, yeah, this is Half-Life. But unless the environment is telling you that that's the case, you're not. It's very arbitrary. So we wrestled with that a long time. Slowly, the sort of
I forgot that was his face.
We started to feel like there was connections between them, and then at some point we realized, oh, we could make this out of the science team, the survivors from Black Mesa, and suddenly, for me, it was the idea of it's the science team. That suddenly, you could put those guys anywhere, and because they have like a familial interconnectedness, and they recognize Gordon, that will make you feel like it's a continuation of this story. Like, obviously, Alex was totally new to that universe, but she had a father who had been at Black Mesa, and
I wish we had
the other scientists were friends, and they had
extended
their
more
relationship into this new
anniversary
world.
updates as well after these documentaries.
Science team, and that was a while till we
because
got there.
that would
much
that
like
would
the
add
first
like a
one, where
lot.
all the contributors were really collectively deciding on the direction, is we were really making a push to grow the team and hire new artists. Zombie
Because they
Inn
gave an
was
anniversary
influential,
update for the
early
first
contributor.
Half-Life.
I think
They
he
gave
and
an
I were doing
anniversary update
character
for Half-Life
designs
2.
for Gordon and
But
for
they didn't
Alex
get
and
Blue
for
Shift or
some
opposing
of the
forces in
antagonist
anniversary
Combine
update. I really
characters.
want to
At the
experience
time, I
those.
was looking at a lot
If it's on a stream or not, that will be up to fate.
helmets, which I think are kind of one
Until
of the
then,
defining
no, we're
features,
just gonna
was based
exist
off
over
some
here.
gas masks from Europe that I had seen in some reference. I remember doing early concepts of the new HEV suit, like what's Gordon gonna be now? And I had kind of just started.
He's gonna
so
be
I was
a
like, I'm gonna make
badass
this
mute
my
pro
own.
day.
It looked, I guess, kind
That
of like
dies
the
a lot
still
because
suits
I'm
in
bad at
Doom,
playing Half-Life
but black
2.
and a lot more belt buckles and latex. And Gabe was just kind of like, "What's this?"
Yeah.
It's Gordon. I was like really proud and excited. Like, why is it not orange? Like, or something to that effect of essentially like, why are you giving up this iconic part of the character?
People love it.
Yeah, people love that. So what are you doing? And it's like, I was like, yeah, I guess he's right.
He needs
so we kinda
orang.
went back to the drawing board and ended up with
He needs
what
that
shit.
orang
We had
color.
like, I don't know, so many creatures that we tried and abandoned.
I'm gonna be here by
not
the
because they
way, a
were
while, by the way,
bad,
because this is 2
we had
hours.
better things to pursue.
I'm gonna be very
like there were
fascinated,
the
just
tactics,
zoned in into this,
the
locked
cremator,
in,
the crab synth,
and I'm
the
gonna
stalkers,
enjoy
like
it.
Stalkers we
enemy.
had along with the game.
Yeah, we shipped
Prototype
stalkers,
stalker.
but not an adversary that you fought.
Yeah, there was definitely an evolution of how biological versus how synthetic
just like the
a lot of
fucking
the
stalker
creatures in
screen.
Half-Life 2 were, and
hang
I
on,
was
I'm gonna
always
pull up
hoping to
this
get to a
fucking-
space where it was ambiguous, where you couldn't quite tell if this was created or if it had grown or if it was natural or synthetic.
There was some synths I did that never shipped. Actually, we did ship them. They were at the
All
end of the
right,
game when you're going
Scream
through the
warning.
Citadel. I had designed these synths that no animator could figure out how to actually move
No, I
because
just
they
want the
weren't
one.
built to move.
And much
That
like some
one.
of the environments that we've seen released in the leak that
That's
were
very
very dark. Some of the
anticlimactic.
early Half-Life stuff was also very dark, but at the time, video games were very dark.
In
There
the
we
interim,
go. I
before
wanna-
we hired
I wanna
Fletcher,
read that.
and before Victor was there,
And now
because
I
he was
can
the
play
old
it
environment
whenever I
guy,
knew release
I don't remember
expected.
how it came about that they built this level, but the idea was there was some looting going on. And the idea was you're in this little alley and you see a citizen, you hear a voice saying, TV! Bring TV! Like they just got into the TV store and there's the citizens and the cops are fighting and you see a citizen run past you holding a TV set and he goes, get one, get a TV, get yourself a TV. And then he runs off down the thing and you go in another courtyard and there's a cop with a nightstick and a citizen and they're like having a fist fight. And it's interesting because the NPCs are negotiating their bounding boxes and there's some animation like how difficult it is to contact.
We captured everything. We took pictures of whiteboard
I had some
design
tricks
sessions.
before
There
this.
were
This is
really
like
crude drawings and ideas.
very
Some of
hard
the stuff
to
from the
keep
very beginning
tricks
made it
something
all the way
down,
to the
but
end.
I'm willing to try.
Ravenholm, antlions, dog.
What if I
climbers,
was
head
evil
crab,
enough to
and,
combine tricks with
those
Cocoa
things were
Puffs?
just so fun in the moment that how could they not survive, right? The other
Is
thing
that
that was
something I
really
can do?
memorable is I remember we started
Or
making
would
a
serial
world
fanatics
really
try to kill me for
really
that?
dark at the beginning, and some of the concept art shows
fuck
that
you, I
we
can
didn't
buy
think
what I
players
want.
would enjoy spending 20 to 40 hours in such a a dark and a kind of
I combined
oppressive
cinnamon
setting,
toast crunch
so
with
the
Fruity
game
Pebbles
lightened
once.
up
You can't tell me
considerably
what to
over time,
do.
but you know, still maintain.
I mean, I regretted it, but
the
still.
feeling of
Just dropping
purity
by to
state.
say hi,
So
buddy.
I
Hi.
was trying to like get all these cool ideas.
How
that
are
the team had
you? I
already
hope you're
when I
doing
arrived,
fine. I'm gonna be
and
here
streamlined
just
them.
watching this
You know,
because
instantly, I think we were
I'm the only
friends
one
with
that's
Mark
gonna be
Label.
interested
We
in
had a
this.
common sort of vision and fantasy.
I wonder what the anniversary
to
update
create
for this
a
actually entails. I
Orwell-like
didn't check
city.
yet.
And then slowly,
Well, I
you
guess
know,
we'll find
I
out
brought
at the end of these
context
2
behind that.
hours of
The
watching.
idea that we can place this in an anonymous Central Eastern European city, which is a perfect setting because, you know,
I should make a
in these
poll and
countries
ask
there were
people if they
so
wanna
many
see
waves of
Half-Life or not.
invasions. You know, we had the
Not
Ottoman
right away though.
Empire,
I
we
need to
had the
fucking
Russians,
take my break
and
after
now
I
why not
upload
the
games I
others?
listen
And
down.
one of the
Done.
first maps I remember working on
Yeah,
was
sure, dude,
called
I
Test
should
Room
say your best
Standards.
mission.
On Half-Life, every level designer kind of had their
At the
own idea of
same
how
time,
big stairs
would
were,
be
or how big
interesting.
steps were going to be, or how big a button was. Make sure we had some consistency. Another thing that was sort of important was just getting more people to go on field trips and going to do research. Because I think a lot of the level designers on Half-Life 1, you know, just were building very abstractly, and so we wanted to have some more grounding in
I don't
reality.
think I'm gonna be
have more
talking much
realistic
because I'm just so
proportions,
zoned in into
and,
this.
Also, just get textures were going from
No,
hand painted
while
to
this
more
is happening,
photographic.
let me just,
So we would
well,
go out and
firstly, let
collect
me
a lot of
just,
pictures for those,
let's do this.
textures to start building for the new library.
I joined
Because that was funny. And now let me make a poll and see if people would like to see Half-Life
I know
down
that it was
below.
at least a year because I was put on Borealis, which was like everybody else had disowned. But then I came along and said, oh, well, I guess this is now your problem. So I started on Borealis, and of course I failed at that too. I eventually got cut.
Yeah, so I came in having had experience doing game AI. I was at Looking Glass Studios. Probably the biggest thing I did there was lead program on Thief, the Dark Project, to do the AI for that too. And actually my first thing is they handed Borealis to me to do the...
After I'd finished?
To do the AI for the guy that you're supposed to walk through the Borealis ship with.
There was a bunch of work
Yeah,
put
that'll
into
work.
it. We even went
I'm
on an
gonna make
icebreaker ship.
3
to get
days,
reference. As
3
soon as we
hours,
started to put it
and
together,
3
we realized
minutes.
How unbelievably tight the space was, and you could never make any
The
kind
hell
of
is
really
this?
interesting combat in it, and so it just withered on the vine right there.
I mean, when I started, there was that document that was the tech wish list.
Yes.
It was just this very bare bones bullet list of tech features. And I mean, I think it was like 6 years of work to build that tech list and then realize it into a product and leverage all the implications of it. You know?
So this was a main feature. The lab felt
Let me try that.
very, very
Let me get on that
realistic
one.
and intuitive because of the source engine and the collaboration between artists and engineers. Ken Birdwell, and he was a fan about photography and getting the lighting right.
Oh, yeah, that was a big goal.
And not only that, the math that everybody was using was wrong.
God.
And then as I started to correct it, and I realized just how bad it was, and then I fixed it, and suddenly everything looked great. I had to go tell the hardware guys, the people who made hardware accelerators, that fundamentally the math was wrong on their cards. That took about 2.5 years. I could not convince the guys. Finally, we hired Gary.
What a nice
McTaggart and
house. I
Charlie
could
Brown,
probably make this in
and those
Gmod.
guys had enough pull and enough. I have a fine
I'm
arts
gonna
degree.
play
Nobody's gonna
Gmod
listen to
at
me.
this.
Charlie and I met at college.
But I
at the
know
University
some of my
Florida.
mods on
We were
those
both getting
Screamo
computer
bastards.
science degrees.
I have a
Yes.
feeling anyways.
I ended up dropping out.
So I'm gonna have to wait and see
to go work at 3DFX
which one's
as
which
a
because
boy 11 there,
I don't want to have
and
to
then
uninstall
I think, Charlie,
everything
you
and get it back
graduated,
again.
didn't you?
I graduated and I followed you, and I was 17.
Yeah.
I was 17.
There were 3 kind of principles. One was to make something that was immersive, visually really rich and appealing, something more like you would see in a film, and the art direction
Yeah,
and
I
the
think you nailed
technology to
it
make that happen.
enough.
Second one was to have characters that you cared about. So basically, that
Granted,
could
it's
react
not realistic
emote
in the
that
slightest, but
mattered in
it's
the world
still
instead
good.
of just being
Graphics
signposts. Third
aren't
was to have,
everything, and
a
if you say
responsive
otherwise, I'll
environment
punch you in the
with
gut.
physics that mattered.
I think that
So
I,
hard that
maybe
you get
more than
flung
other
to a
people
wall.
realized
Yeep!
how big of a task we were setting for ourselves. Like
I
so
love
was a little
seeing
bit
a looking
daunted
man with
by
this
that.
cursed
We felt the
Schwartz.
pressure from Gabe actually to to double down and make something even grander than Half-Life 1. Therein lies the sort of little bit of the trap of Half-Life 2's development story, which went from being a pretty quick, like, let's figure out how to do this to like a 6-year, slog.
Yeah, and it was like, 6-7 days a week, 10 to 14 hours a day.
Yeah, we're gonna cut your feature. Sorry, it's just not worth it.
So I ended up being really the point person.
That probably
working
happens
with
a
the
lot in
FBI.
game devs.
I remember coming in that morning and figuring it out, and it just felt like
That's
someone
really
punched me
depressing,
in
but
the
no,
gut.
it's just
What's
it's
this
just
game?
how
Can
game
we still keep
goes.
working on the game? Like, is someone just going to release the whole game tomorrow?
I definitely was not shielded from that.
I remember one conversation with Gabe, which is like, he was like, so how fucked are we? Yeah, we're kind of screwed.
The company was pretty close to going bankrupt. I was pretty close
I
to going
forgot about
bankrupt.
those.
It's like,
I
there was no
got
money
so
left.
used to Valve just not having fuck it all, and yeah,
when
it's
that
just what happened out of nowhere.
A real bullshit move. Are we allowed to cry in this documentary? That's what I want to know.
Are we at chapter 2 now? Hey, we're at chapter 2 for 4 months. I know
Remember, we
it's a
shipped
long
Half-Life 1.
Oh, God.
And, the world loved it. It was super happy.
Okay, guess we're gonna have to
And
politely.
we had a big meeting.
I
and
assume
Gabe looks at
70
me and he's
chapters,
like,
I'm
"So all the
gonna be
animations are
into it
terrible.
the whole time.
How are you going to make Half-Life 2 better?"
In Half-Life 1, we got
That
we,
is
we
the
made
question.
what were at the time significant improvements, but still they were fairly robotic and mechanical, and so we had to go and do a huge amount of work on the animation system and on the facial animation system and coming up with authoring tools that allowed you to do it.
God, there's so much you gotta wrap your head around to get this shit working.
A lot of this was level designer design, like figuring out how to build atmosphere. We knew that we wanted to start you off seeing the Citadel right away.
I
we
wonder
wanted
how
to
some of
introduce
these
the city with
these devs feel
this
like
great voice
after
acting
they
from
fucking
Call.
like
We wanted to
many
finally
years
do real
after the
characters.
game
We knew that
is
from
done.
Half-Life 1,
Do they just
the way
revisit
that
it just
players
for
would
the
respond
memories?
to having any character talk to them?
And in
was,
general,
way
can we just
beyond
have all the
the
devs
reaction
just
we
come back
expected.
together
Like,
to
when
talk
we
about
figured
their
this out in
time
playtesting,
voicing
like,
and
if
work
Barney
on
would
the
follow you
games and all
around
that?
and shoot things.
Oh, more
suddenly just loved this
documentaries
guy.
like
You love the
this.
scientists, you love these characters.
I'm having
So we
trouble
knew we
pronouncing
wanted to
documentaries.
just bring that like
I have
way
no idea
up to the
why.
next,
It's supposed to be
levels
easy
beyond
word.
what we could imagine.
And the theory was if we could make
No,
a character who could
the next levels beyond.
Nah.
Bring that,
I just
way up to the next levels beyond what we could imagine.
I just had to try that.
make a character that realistically
Beta stalker
that would
screen.
help the player.
Yeah, that's
make
gonna be
emotional
fucking
connection
definitely.
to the other characters.
That's
in the
what's gonna
game.
carry us
And at the
through
time
this.
we decided we were going to do that, not only did none of the technology work, but I would go talk to industry professionals and they would tell me not to bother because you couldn't do it. Luckily found a research
I kinda
work
wanna
done in the
play
70s by
Half-Life
Dr. Paul Ekman. And
same
he
time,
just
I don't
broken
wanna
down
do
how
too
the
many
face
things
works
before
and how humans make expressions.
Because I need my
And
time
he has
off.
this incredibly wonderful
One of these
formal
faces.
clinical
JFK, is that
of what a
you?
face does and the sorts of things that
God.
people do with their face.
I
The fuck
tried
is that
this
AI
experiment
generated
with
looking at
putting a grid
JFK?
on Scott Lynch's face and shooting him.
My
from the front and
friends,
side
I
so
am
that
in
we could
Half-Life.
Get points from this grid and 3 space for the geometry, and we got shots of his texture, and we found a good way to model a reasonable head of his geometry,
it's the real
and
life
then,
man. I
project the
wonder if I
texture
can.
onto it, and then
I wonder if he's
abstract
still
it or
around.
stylize it enough so that it didn't look totally photographic, but it looked like a kind of a real person.
Occasionally, when somebody hears the history, it will, generate a light bulb. But no, I don't get accosted.
No one's asking you for beers or anything.
No, for buying me beers.
We added Ken's eye tech to that, which was amazing because he really modeled and he went deep into the research of how eyes work.
Eyeballs was about 9 months, just on eyeballs. But you have to do each step. You have to get the shape of the eye right. You have to get how
I'm
the
getting
eye
a sudden
lid
headache.
gets pushed by the cornea in the bottom.
That just reeks of the old days of Windows.
Your
Just
lower
like,
lid,
look
your
at
upper
that
lid,
shit.
all of those get shifted
That's
slightly. It's
some
all
OG
automatic.
technology
It
right
was wonderful.
there.
The day I got it working, the characters went from looking like interesting dolls to Alex just looked at me. Oh my God, this is working.
They would ask for surprising things at times. Like they wanted really fine control over looking at named objects in the 3D world, no matter what direction the actor is facing. So you had to figure out things about, oh, maybe the upper body needs to turn and the head needs to turn and the eyes need to turn.
So we're in the elevator coming back from Starbucks to get morning coffee, and we saw this face, and it's like, that's him. That's the scientist, and he was an accountant in the firm below ours in Kirkland.
Yeah, nothing kind of blows your mind when you've been working all day on this character in your game, and all of a sudden you get on the elevator and you're like, holy crap, it's him.
I once ran into him at the airport.
So we cast people that were real change vendors in front of supermarkets. We cast waiters in restaurants.
When I was in junior high school, I took karate classes, and that was my old karate instructor.
Randy Lundeen said, hey, there is a guy holding a sign for work at this exit on 520 every day who has this great face, and he took a picture of his face, and he stopped and asked if he could. And so it's like, oh, this is great. I think this guy's Eli. You know, we brought him in and, you know, paid him a couple $100s, which is what we were paying people back then, and so that's where he came from.
Erdine Grcic was a Bosnian friend from that I knew from school. He was like, we want the East European contingent and stuff too, so it was pretty interesting.
We wanted anybody.
So many males and females and
so, you know, we found people from pretty much every
This
skin
has
color,
gotta be the
different
longest
ages,
process
male and
ever,
female,
considering
equal
how
numbers of
long.
males and females.
Actually,
Sadly
no,
for
you
them,
don't
they all
scroll
have to share
that
the
long
same
through
voice.
the Half-Life Ragdoll section of Gmod Ragdolls for
across
Half-Life.
the plaza. We hoped for one more fighter to help storm that barricade. We never dreamed
It's
it
just
would be
mostly
you.
the same face,
Climate
but
Lab
applied
was
with
the
different
first
outfits on.
Prototype that we did of how characters could work together in a scene.
Yeah, it was like a proof of concept. We kind of had to make that work, you know, and we put everything we could into it at the time to test all the technology, and then
yeah, that can. Oh, never mind. That looks very
engaging rather than just audio, radio play kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, that was the point where that scene was where it all started to come together, all our theories and hopes for what the experience might be.
And it all went completely smoothly. It was out of the box. It was amazing.
The most difficult technical aspects are really kind of boring. They're the, okay, the character is running through AI, and now they need to jump in and do,
Chapter 9, the
hug
epilogue.
another
Okay, so
character.
it's
Now
10.
they need to pick up something from the desk, and that thing on the desk can move, and where the character is can move, and where the player is can move, and everything about this whole scene can move dynamically. And to get to that stage where it just looks right is this huge technical challenge and artistic challenge. But once it's done, it's just amazing.
Is it? Look like Play-Doh.
Gordon, snap out of it. You're staring at me again.
I'll stare at you. Oh.
Warming up nicely.
Are you sure you don't want me to swap out the polarizer?
I remember when we got Fletcher on, and he would kind of teach us about how they did things at Disney, and they would bring in acting coaches for the animators. What does sarcasm look like? Certain expressions, and there's a timing to those expressions. And
when you have a scene with multiple characters, it's not
I
always
can
the
see how
person
that
talking
works.
that's doing the acting, right? Everybody's acting. You know, even though you may
Actually,
be
no, I'm
looking
just-
at Kleiner because
I'm
he's the
just
one
fucking
talking,
with you. I never
every
really
character
thought
in that
about
scene
that.
around you, behind you, they're all doing stuff because not everybody's going to be looking at the same place.
Yeah, I remember even just like when Alex teleports and then you see her show up on the screen, right?
Oh, that was
and she's
incredible.
Heads over,
Yeah,
gives
it was
him a quick,
worried.
gives him a quick kiss, and what, like it tells you so much about the relationship without having to say, "Hi, Dad, I love you," and all this extra like heavy-handed stuff. So.
Jake was a random demo reel that was sent in. That was incredible.
Jake was incredible.
Jake was incredible. Like, miss that guy.
One of a kind.
Yeah, miss that guy. amazing technical animator.
Yeah, I mean, Jake was one of those guys that, you know, whatever needed to be done, he would figure it out and just make it happen, you know, with it.
It'll just get done correctly.
I think also the context of when all this was taking place, like the problems that he was helping solve were just things that weren't being done. Even something as simple as passing someone an object between two characters sounds super simple, but actually really complex, especially back then. So he really helped push, like, how do we even do this?
I've seen this
in
intro
collaboration
section
with the
so many
programmers.
times because I never had the motivation to go through it all.
Thing. So I worked on the shader for that. I did the stuff for rendering that and all the little monitors everywhere that showed other scenes. Did the refraction shaders and the supporting code for that. The shaders didn't really have conditionals or loops or anything like that, so we would unroll it all and compile a bazillion shaders. It got to the point where it was so many shaders and it took so long to compile that we, I think Mike DeSalt implemented distributed building system. Everyone's machine in the company was running something that could sit there and compile shaders all the time or do lighting for the levels or whatever.
It's all like any opportunity to kind of add to the visual storytelling, I think was...
Yeah, and I think we hid the first G-Man sighting there.
He was one, that's right, he was one of the monitor.
Yeah.
It would flip to him, yeah.
And then he'd just walk out of frame.
The moment where you see him makes you realize there must be a lot of moments where you didn't know he was watching you. He's not Big Brother. That doesn't make sense to me that he would be a Big Brother, because that's sort of industrial and bureaucratic. And this is much more intimate. He's always over your shoulder, watching, waiting for the moment to speak.
Are you the voice actor?
That's where I think he...
Hey, you are!
lives.
I fucking knew it.
My name is Mike Shapiro, and I am G-Man. I am also Barney. And, you know, Barney's not... He's not that far from... You know,
That's
G.
so
Gordon,
different.
like, he's not that far from where I live. You know, he's so fallible and you know, he's always tripping over himself. And
Oh, yeah.
he's
Oh,
just
yeah,
such a
voice
good
acting
guy,
such a-
you know? Not necessarily the most capable, but just really there for you.
Get that thing away from me. Here, my pet. Hop up.
I think early on I had a sense that G-Man knew a lot and was taking care of a lot that we didn't quite understand, was kind of enjoying fucking with people and massaging reality in a way that he had a unique capacity to do. There were also aspects to him that I knew pretty early on, like his relationship to time is very different than you or I would think. In my mind, he could literally be in two places at once, and so sometimes there was a kind of an implied hitch in his timing, or he's experiencing 2 or 3 different moments at once, and that might be funny for a reason that you don't know because you're only in one time with him at a moment.
The right man in the wrong place can make all the difference in the world.
I think as we realized how well she worked, coming out of stuff like the Kleiner's Lab experience, we started looking for more and more ways to include her. in stuff.
And of course, she really came to life when we found Merle Dandridge.
Yeah. We could feel her already as a partner in creating this character, I think, coming out of that. She's just got a creative relationship with this character, and she's going to bring a lot to it.
I feel like she was really able to bring a warmth and humor into her deliveries, too, that other people, it was more like Soldier in a Game, a little bit. I mean, she did this great job of bringing, like, a character warmth into it.
And now we're sitting ducks unless we can get this thing running. Come on,
Yeah.
Dr. Kleiner, is it gonna work or not?
No, there's nothing to be nervous about. Let's see. Massless field flux should self-limit, and I've clamped the...
My name is Harry Robbins. I'm known as Hal Robbins. I have a stage name of
is this
Dr.
it?
Hal. My only doctorate is in theology from the Church of the Subgenius, which I'm involved
It's
in.
it.
Well,
It's the guy.
I think perhaps Mark was familiar with
It's
the
the
things I
funny
do on the radio, and he thought my voice would be good for it. I have a monthly Ask Dr. Hal show on Twitch and Zoom, and I'm also on a couple of radio shows. Well, I'm a graphic artist. I've worked for DC Comics for their Paradox Press line. Well, I have some patrons who I do painting for. I've painted many things.
Okay, awesome.
I played Dr. Isaac Kleiner.
Kleiner, you are great at commission.
A number of different scientists. I try to pronounce all the words. I make sure to aspirate to consonants. For example, I don't say didn't the way most people do, even newscasters today. I always make sure to say didn't. Perhaps it sounds archaic that way. Mark wrote archaic expressions into my dialogue, and I would say things like, oh, fi, and so forth.
No, not up there. No, no. Careful, Lamar. Those are quite fragile.
There goes Lamar.
Oh, fi. It'll be another week before I can coax her out of there.
Yeah, longer if we're lucky.
Barney, you're not an animal person.
It was always pleasant. I was always well treated. They were always patient. Even if I mispronounced something which was obvious, they would correct me and I would pay attention. And I always try to be as close as possible to a one-take wonder so they don't have to do it again. But that enabled them to do it many times. And so they had a lot of things which arose from that. And some of these are the things I'm asked to say by fans, which are inexplicable to people who don't know the game. Like, you want this guy to say, have you seen my coffee cup? And why do we all have to wear these ridiculous ties?
Why do we all have to wear these ridiculous ties? Three. Pick up that kid. Nuh-uh. Oh, okay then.
So in the same way that we thought it was important in Half-Life 1 that when you shot a wall, that we put decals on the wall to indicate that you shot it. We wanted to say, okay, what happens when you throw a grenade at a bunch of boxes, right? The world itself needed to be more reactive to everything you did.
We used some third-party code, but Jay Kelly was the one who really wrote the wrapper on that integrated it.
And physics was even early in the project was pretty successful. Right? Once we got over the initial thing of like things falling over, and we started adding breakable objects, things you could script and hammer. We added vehicles, sound cues from all the objects.
This is so interesting.
The AIs, you could drop things on them and crush them, things like that. All of those behaviors, once we got just a few of those things in.
Just imagine this era in which physics are just so funky.
Masses got
and
broken
yet it's about as simple as 1, 2, 3 to make a ragdoll if you have this one dies.
Well, you say. So yeah, all right. So the question is whether it's bigger than a bread box or smaller than a space station.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's.
When you went to the bus and the text says, "Oh, this thing weighs as much as a racehorse."
Yeah. You knew it was more than a bread box.
You're like, well,
but not as much as a space station.
I think so, but I don't know in the scale if it's closer to this or closer to that.
Yeah, because
refrigerator.
Yeah, refrigerator. This all came from, at some point, I think it was an Inspirer.
Yeah.
So you could look at any entity in the game and turn on a bunch of debugging text about it. And one of the most important things to
like
get
all
right
this
in every
shit
object in the
is
game
so
that
mundane
physics
now, but
simulated
back in the
mass
day,
that
oh
dictated
boy,
an
this
enormous
is
amount of things, like the amount of force it would,
this was some
apply
40
something
chess
else,
levels
impact, hit them,
complicated.
the amount of force, its response when it's hit by
And
something
for
else. So
some
had to
indie
get it
like
right.
me,
But of course, like mass is just a
I
number.
still
Like,
some
what does this
4D
mean to
chess
anyone?
shit,
And
I
so
ain't
think it
gonna
was David
lie.
Spire who found
I
online
still don't get some of those
some
basic
list of
shit, but
masses
you
and
know,
objects,
it's still
and he
fun.
just
It's just a challenge, so you can overcome it with your big brain, or at least try to get a big brain, and
so
then
over
you'll
time,
win.
like you all just got that locked in, and
my
because it
head.
was like a logarithmic scale, it went from things
My
like
head like-
bread box, paint can, or something up to like space stations.
Yeah, the moon.
The moon.
You're like, what? What do we do with this? At this point, it's just keyframe at that point.
Yeah, so there would be many like conversations where we'd say, like, I don't know, do you think that's more like a racehorse or the space station?
The very first physics puzzle that we put in the game, from a development calendar standpoint, was the washing machine puzzle, where you push the washing machine into the hopper and raise the ramp for the airboat to jump over. We developed that because we felt like we had this section of relentless pressure with the attack helicopter. Watching players play test, we felt like they needed relief from it. You see the very first training of it in the on-foot canals with the teeter-totter that you have to put the cinder blocks on, which was added to the game later, and it's sort of training of like, hey, you can interact with levers and balance and
This
create
is
paths for
so
yourself.
mundane now
And
to
then,
think
yeah,
about.
later the
but
buoyancy
again, it's
puzzle,
just-
we added that one after the washing
Imagine
machine
all
puzzle.
the shit you
And it was
have to
just kinda
go
like,
through just to
oh,
get.
you can connect masses with invisible pulley systems and then build little machines that way.
Don't waste your flashlight, you fucking idiot.
I guess at first, right, the gravity gun was kind of this, we weren't even sure we were going to ship it in the game. It was like a development tool. And so it was like this beam, you could reach out and grab things and pull them toward you or reposition them, drop them, grab them from another point. But then we talked about simplifying it and just making it to where it was just pushing on things and pulling on things. And where could we go with that?
And the first draft of Ravenholm wasn't really about physics so deeply, right? We ended up reorganizing the game to put Ravenholm after you get the gravity gun.
I can't wait
Originally,
to
it was
hear about
before
the
you would,
hacking thing. I heard
park the
about it
airboat
once,
at
but
the
I
dock
never
of
really went that
Ravenholm
far
and get
into
out
it, so
and go
it'd be
explore
interesting to
Ravenholm.
see someone. Is this it? Did I jinx it?
We wanted like a horror area, since in a lot
I
of ways
jinxed it.
Half-Life was a horror game, and the horror was kind of leaching out of Half-Life 2. So we at least wanted one environment that was just scary. And then we had a design meeting where Doug Woods said, preacher with a shotgun, and I was like, oh, yes.
The important thing to know is like we didn't sit down and design Ravenholm as like the tutorial for all those things. It kind of kept getting things over time, and then after we got more physics working, we had
that's so
this
nice.
idea that there would be traps for the zombies in there that were physics, and there were a bunch of them, and they didn't all make it into the final game. And then some of them did work though, and we had to build a system for cutting the zombies in half once we added the propeller traps, and we had to make them the right height so you could crawl under them or the zombies could crawl under them. And then someone had the idea, well, what if the top half can keep going and it can get you under there? We tried that and that was great. Someone had the idea of saw blade, and Ravenholm already existed, and we ended up based on this behavior happening in another level, built the saw blade and put it back in Ravenholm.
Ravenholm was probably some of the most fun I had working on Half-Life 2. The whole idea behind Ravenholm, and that we were going to start a real demo to force them in a position where they have to rely on physics and the context of the objects around them. It's like, oh, wouldn't it be awesome if the zombie, it's going to take him 30 more seconds to get to me. But he's got like a barrel,
in Half-Life is the equivalent of dismembering everything in Dead Space.
This would be a cool thing to do with it, and it'd be a thing
At least for what I experienced.
Scary and fun.
But I've experienced Half-Life 2 first.
Was little touches like
I feel like
I think we called them puzzlets.
puzzlets.
They weren't puzzles; they were puzzlets.
Yeah, it's the thing that takes you between 5 and 60 seconds to resolve, and at the end you either get something or you feel a certain way, and it was really a big part of making sure that like minute-to-minute gameplay, as we called it, was interesting. Yeah, he was good at that.
We actually did this as an exercise of like, okay, take, all the elements in the game and have a grid of, rows and columns of all those elements, and make sure that there's a meaningful thing at each intersection of the cells, so that everything has a meaningful interaction with everything else. And where we saw empty cells.
Damn you, Trits. No, the Trits can have the Trits. I don't want the Trits.
Grenades or whatever, Okay, we need to make sure that they'll eat the grenade and then blow up.
Like the reason we build these scripting level design tools, it's just, it makes it accessible for all the people on the team.
God, I want more games that have this sort of trap
put
thing
something
designed
together,
to trap people in
idea.
half.
See what we can do with this. And the entity system's no different, right?
That would be fun.
A lot of things the level designers just want to, I have this idea for something that could happen. Is that fun?
I just want a game design with the whole dismembers course and all that.
Yeah, I was on TF2 at that time.
And
I don't remember exactly. I think it was during 2000 maybe? Someone else has probably told you this and got the dates actually right. But at some point, we all jumped from TF2 over to Half-Life 2. I feel like that marks the sort of in some ways, in retrospect, like the end of like pre-production really on Half-Life 2, and it becomes now.
Right, but who were you
like,
in
let's
TF2?
build this thing and ship it.
I'm slightly curious about that, but I know we won't get answers. Is this the hack part? Road trips. Okay, never mind. I'm kind of interested though. Who did
Actually,
you
the first
voice
thing
in
I got told to
TF2?
work on was a jet ski, and I spent 3 weeks trying to figure out a jet ski.
God,
in first
everyone
person.
wears
I was
shorts
like,
in
none
that
of this is
environment.
working. I can't.
And I don't blame
see
you.
how
It's
how do
probably
you do
hot
this
as
without
balls
making
over
people
there.
sick? So I remember one weekend out of frustration, I just made the airboat. I don't know. Maybe it's the Florida bit in me.
So Charlie Brown had worked on the airboat, and then we
Charlie
picked it up,
Brown.
a different group. We
Is that
started working on the
unironically
canals,
his name?
and we had this idea of it was going to be
Now
kind
I'm
of like a lot of
interested.
tricks under pressure, where you're doing like skateboarding type moves. I think it was Kelly Bailey who basically said, I'm playing the canals and I'm trying to do these tricks and I'm failing, and then I'm getting shot. And he's like, I want to be like Smokey and the Bandit. I just want to be smashing my way out. We did this whole other pass of the canals where we dialed down the consequences for failing the tricks, and we dialed up the feeling of, power. Some players absolutely refused to really stay in their airboats. They wanted to get out and look under every rock, behind every tree. For those players, we had to craft enough density through the lengths of the canals to keep them entertained and happy. And then there were people who just wanted to
God,
smash
must
through
be
everything and treat it like a race.
just trying to please everyone is a tedious task, especially if you're a new guy.
That would clash.
If you stop here, we're going to give you a reward, basically, either a narrative reward.
Can't ever
or
please
an
everyone, but
actual,
it's still a noble attempt.
The lambda caches,
at least
the lambda
try.
signs, we use them a lot more in the canals, and part of that is literally because we did it afterwards. Like, I'd worked on coast maps, and we didn't have that yet.
The canals are restrictive because we want you to drive this airboat through them, and we've got all these fun things to do. Like, you could jump over things, you could smash through things. The worst case scenario is you're trapped with people who have guns and they're shooting at you, and you don't necessarily have a way of shooting back. So, that led to, well, we need to add a weapon to the vehicles.
Well, part of it was the helicopter was such a persistent pain in your ass that we really wanted to put a bow on that whole experience and give you some vindication, some, vengeance, where you get to now hunt the helicopter. So as soon as we attach it, one thing we really intentionally did is you start to drive down the tunnel and the helicopter pops down in your face and it's blocking you, and you have no choice but to just shoot it if you want it to go away. And then you see it
That's
flee.
a good design
And
choice
so
right
it's like,
there.
oh,
Just imagine
okay,
the
players
euphoria
can
you get
connect the
from
dots,
defeating
right? Now it's
something
my turn.
like a pain in the ass
so
like that.
the next sequence is all about chasing the helicopter down to that final battle at the dam.
Yeah.
I remember we worked pretty intentionally to make it the ultimate showdown between you and the helicopter, and some of it was by accident. I remember Brian Jacobson, who did a lot of the code for that. At one point, it accidentally did this thing where it just spit out a ton of bombs, and we're like, that is awesome. Keep that. Make that part of the fight. We tried to make it as action intensive as we could within reason, right? That battle was actually, in a way, we designed it to be a final exam. We unraveled those elements into the levels beforehand, right? You learned how to dodge bombs.
Oh,
You
you
learned how to
really
shoot
wanna
at
play
it,
Half-Life 2
and you
now?
learned how to shoot while driving. And then we throw these
This happened
things
the same
together
time
at
as
you
the
with a little
first.
bit of a
This
twist.
happened
Canals
with
was
this
sort of like a
first
crucible
documentary
because a lot
as
of
well.
good
It's like,
things
I'm gonna play
came out of it
Half-Life,
because
then
it
I
was
got
such a
bored
difficult
instantly.
design problem. The easy
If I had
thing to do is to
incentive
make
the
a
way to do
punishment
Half-Life, though, I
where
would
you,
need to
you
do
just
so.
say you can't go here and we're
Maybe
going to shoot
just
you
two,
and
though.
force
I'm
you to
not good
fail
at
and
the
fail and
first
fail
one.
until you get to see the next part.
I guess
It's much
exactly. It's
harder
also
to create
very hard to
something
get
where the
into
player
it.
feels there's an evolution, they have some power and some agency.
Maybe
so their
Black
skill
Mesa.
is being rewarded.
That was a joke.
And they can be creative
Not
in
optimized.
that restrictive environment.
Oh, they should do a fucking Portal documentary. Just for the sake of getting that out there. I wanna see what Portal went through.
So basically had a whole car engine down to through transmission, down into gearing and differentials and turning the tires. But then it turned out like, oh, we can really only go 15, 20 miles an hour. Otherwise, you would blast through the extents of the map in about 10 seconds, which wasn't going to do anybody any good. People made jumps, they made all these things. Nothing was working. So I was like, oh, you must be doing a jump. I'm just going to turn off gravity on the car for a little while and let it just go, and then gradually ramp it back in so that it actually felt like you were jumping.
It was interesting how like the dynamics of the buggy was so much about like the perceived experience versus how it actually like performed.
It just sounds like it's going faster than it is. So Jay and I worked really hard on these engine sounds and this fake transmission and doing all this stuff. But you're really going like 30 miles an hour maybe. So it's like someone just driving around in first gear.
Got pulled into Coast because I was interested in working on more game stuff. But
So that's
two,
why
it was
that's I
the
feel that
biggest,
useful in Gary's
I guess,
mod.
group of people utilizing the displacement tech, since it was more of a terrainy thing and outdoors. And we were trying to figure out how we wanted to use the displacements, meaning we knew we wanted the things to look more natural. There was a lot more geometry in those maps than our previous ones, given just displacements in general. We were always struggling with performance and trying to figure out how to make things a little bit faster, easier, or where we could make things do what we wanted them to do, but not necessarily cost as much as they cost.
It's much faster than walking speed. So you just signed up for building a huge amount of game. People can just stop and get out anywhere. So now you have this trade-off of density versus distance.
We got a vehicle we want to drive for a while, so make those levels long. But from Half-Life, we still had the philosophy of there should be something cool around every corner. Not like a monster popping out of you, but different reasons to be engaged in the world. So they would dot the coastline with little towns, and you knew if you went exploring, you'd always get some kind of reward for that. It might be a health pack and ammo, or it might be a character interaction.
Yeah, I don't wake up
So
old to see
that
if
would let
people
the
are still interested in
player
seeing
set
Metal
their
Gear
own
Solid
pace
2 on
and
the
feel like
trail.
They get to explore the world,
that
and
my
they're always
initial
rewarded
plans?
for that. But if they wanted to drive straight through,
Taking a break
they
finally,
could.
or no?
I worked on like the area where there's the roller mines first come in, and you know, you're going along a curving path, and then there's like they blow up all the rocks and drop stuff in front of your path to try and slow you down, and then you've got like a little house fight. There were cases early on where people would just try to drive past everything and be like, why would I stop at this if I've got a car? And so we really wanted them to like be fairly unavoidable, and so you'd have to get out and deal with taking them off your car, and then you'd, you know, be in the space. So it's really fun just, you know, jumping in there with the Combine soldiers and crafting little fight
I don't think
scenarios.
I ever got
What
that
makes
far enough.
AI
I've made
fights
that far enough
interesting
and
is
only
not
with
that they're
those
the
balls.
smartest or the best or anything. Like, it's easy to make AI that
Except
can
you
just
can't be
perfectly
smart.
shoot the player and kill them. That's not what makes them smart. It's putting on a show that makes them feel interesting. So, like in that fight in particular, you go up inside of a building and you get to the second floor, and you're fighting guys in there, and they kind of pull you up there. There's guys up in there, and as you go up and fight them, that happens. But then more guys spawn outside. Like, there's a bunch of windows up in that top section, and there's a crate sort of near the window, and when you go over to get that crate, they start shooting through the window at you. And it's not that the AI actually knows that you're there and starts shooting at the window the moment they see you. There's actually, we have these things called bullseyes that you could place in spots, and they basically would act like a target that the AI wanted to shoot. You know, a lot of that isn't actually the AI being, you know, doing this carefully crafted thing. It's more of us thinking like, what makes this like a neat presentation for the player and gives them that sense that they need to hunker down. Like later on in the same coastline, there's a sequence where you're fighting a gunship and you're in the lighthouse.
Yeah.
And as you go up the lighthouse,
Yeah.
it's like sort of predicting where you are and shooting through the windows right in front of you and giving you that same sort of show. And that's all those eyes. Because almost every game you play, you're developing a sense of mastery, and that actual sense of progress and mastery is the fun. Piecing it all together is like very core to what makes it fun.
I wanna fucking see Lost Coast again. No, it's not. Oh, you mean that? Okay, I see.
Drivable crane first, I think, right? And
Yes.
then we went back and used it again, you know, at the start.
That's a perfect
as
tutorial. Like, it's perfect training. This is how that thing works.
Yeah.
Don't forget.
That's how that thing works.
We did actually get very close to the base of a crane. You know, obviously you want to be in the crane, you want to be driving it, all these things. But yeah, we did get up very close to this crane again. I think it was asking somebody who was just wanting to take some pictures for a video game. Could you just let us in, try to act as like nice and non-threatening as possible?
We need the buggy to get into a state where it was flipped, so you could have to learn to recover it and all that sort of stuff.
Like, oh, we're gonna flip it over, and then you have to proceed, you have to use the gravity gun. We're just trying to wrap that into the narrative instead of just spitting some text that tells you, if this happens, you know.
That was, you know, I mean, the crane was a hard physics problem because, like, one of the worst case scenarios for physics is really, you know, high mass objects moving around because they're going to apply an enormous amount of force to anything they touch. And we have a rigid body physics system. So in the real world, when giant, heavy mass touches something, usually it crushes them. We can't really crush anything. So already we're in like a tricky place. The good news was we had a fixed space it could operate in, right? We could control how far you could extend the thing. And so as the level designers could look at it and be like, these are the only things that the crane will ever really be able to interact with. And so we could be pretty careful around what are the things that this magnet's going to touch. And let's make sure that at least the physics works pretty well for that.
So I worked on the bridge as
okay, I'm gonna lay for this. I had tricks before. What's that chapter? Hold up. No, never mind. Sorry for delaying the inevitable of getting through this video. Anyways, I had tricks before. I thought they were spheres, little circles this whole time.
Anyway, it's this really nice bridge that, like, if you go there, you'll be like, oh yeah, this is
really fascinating.
The fight against the gunship
and baffling.
Really all
because I grew up with the circles instead of the shapes.
Scary, you know, fear of heights scenario of going under the bridge. But we hadn't fully fleshed it all out yet. One of the first things I did was like, what if this was a train bridge and you had to do this, you know, play chicken against the train, and getting the timing quite right took a little bit of work. But hearing the like train horn come in and the moment of realization that players would have of like, probably some people die, a lot of people probably die the first time there, but you have this like, go faster or do I turn around? Like what do I do? I don't know. It was a fun moment to create. All credit to Sawyer on coming up with the going underneath the bridge scenario. People to this day still are like, that freaked them the hell out. Like a lot of people it's sort of seared in their memory, which is just.
I would love to go through this section in stream.
Trying to like capture the
I
sense
totally
of height
would not hate this at all.
Sounds to get the, you know, just to capture
I don't
the
think
sense
I have
of
a fear of heights.
And high above the ground was
that made sense though. I'm a
challenge.
Okay, no, seriously, no, I don't think I have a fear of heights.
And we play tested
and if
it.
I do, then we'll
learn
learn by
the
that
person
stream.
play testing, their knuckles were white. And it was really tense. And of course, then someone had the brilliant idea of like, oh, they finally made it. They felt great.
I'm fascinated now. I don't know if I have a fear of heights or not.
Oh, and the gunship, yeah, that came in, yeah. So that was always fun.
Ah, now you do that. That's when the fear of heights will kick in.
There's this thing we call edge friction. So when you're moving, you have a friction that just reduces your normal movement rate by an amount. But what we would do is whenever players would get close to edges, we would increase that friction a lot so that people wouldn't accidentally fall off things. It's just not fun for the player, right? So there was definitely a bit of friction play involved there.
So that's how that works. So that's why it's like that. That is actually nice.
Freeman.
What?
Hurry, get in the basement. We're expecting gunships
No,
at any moment.
fucking P. Diddy over here. No, get away from me.
I don't totally understand except the performance. We were calling that town New Little Odessa or Little Old New Odessa, and then I got spam email from Odessa Cubbage or something like that. It was definitely a name that came out of an email spam, and I'm like, this name is amazing. So it went straight into the game, and then John Lowry came in and acted him with his fake British accent.
Damn. Let me just send a warning to Lighthouse Point, and then I'll come right up and lend a hand.
So Odessa Cubbage had this whole problem of training
that's
the rocket
actually
launcher.
very funny.
That was a real pain. The laser guiding aspect was just a nightmare to train.
Just imagine your little city name or whatever the fuck.
By itself, because people are under duress.
Why do I smell a fucking fan?
Focusing on some other
Is my
thing
PC blowing?
It's hard to observe what's
No,
going on
okay, my brain's
rationally
just
and
fucking
draw
with me.
lessons from it cleanly.
Oh, my phone's
so
not
you
charging.
work
Just,
hard to
there you go.
You know, you try to teach in combat. We watch a playtester, step out and they fire a rocket at the gunship, and then they duck behind cover. So the laser dot goes onto the fence in front of him. We all hear the rocket turn around and start coming back, and so you hear
It's
like,
basically, here we go, 5, 4, 3.
and then the player looks out again, at the gunship, and the rocket goes, like moves around back at the gunship, and we're like, oh! And then he ducks back again, and we're like, oh my God! We hear the rocket getting louder and louder, and he peeks out again and whips off again.
An integrated part that I think is really always something that Gabe introduced in Half-Life 1 was the way that we playtest and then iterate really rapidly on the playtest results. So you have dozens and dozens of people come through one section of the game, and you sit there painfully, silently, taking notes while they struggle and get frustrated and totally misunderstand your brilliant design. And then you go and you fix that over and over and over again.
If you're typing and your design sucks, then it can be threatening, all right? Like, maybe I'm bad at my job and I should get fired, right? And so a lot of the games industry never did any testing at all. With this playtesting process, that's what basically taught me design in a lot of ways. We would just, we'd come up with an idea for the helicopter, and then we'd be like, okay, let's put it in front of somebody and watch it happen. And then we'd very quickly start realizing that our mental model of like how people are reacting to this stuff is wildly different than what we expected.
Ow. Next chapter.
I joined the team in January 2000. I had met Gabe when he was starting Valve, and I was at Sierra Online. But pretty much the first thing was, Gabe was like, so when you were at Sierra, we did this deal with you for Half-Life and Half-Life 2. You need to go fix that, because we don't like the deal that we did. The intellectual property for Half-Life was owned by Vivendi. The Team Fortress IP was owned by Vivendi. So it was get back our IP, get a better royalty rate, and then have the ability to experiment with online distribution. We knew we were going to grow the team, and then part of the deal was also that we were going to take on all of the funding responsibility for Half-Life 2.
That's my face right now.
There was cash flow from Half-Life. We were figuring out how to do things here and there, like expansion packs. A large part of it was Gabe tapping into his assets.
Is this something that fires? I want something blowing in my face.
Things started to get a little thin.
Let me rephrase. Is this the next chapter? There we go. The lawsuit. What's this for? Oh no.
So I assume you guys have talked to Scott or Eric or somebody about sort of the context of the whole.
Oh, I want Starbucks now. I want a coffee. All I have is energy drink, battery acid,
Sierra, by
bullshit.
that point, had become acquired by Vivendi, had worldwide distribution
Is that dark?
rights,
Is that?
but only for retail package.
Did I say hot chocolate? I meant coffee.
Was licensing
Or
Counter-Strike.
did I
to
say
Starbucks? We went
I
to
forgot.
Vivendi and said, hey, this is not a big deal. Just agree that this is outside of your license. And, we've spent a little bit on attorney's fees, just cover, some tens of thousands, just cover us for that. And we'll move on and just keep going. And they wouldn't do it. I think some people at Vivendi did not like the new deal that they ended up signing. And I think there were some hurt feelings in some
I can't wait to encounter some lawsuits sort of shit
when we
like
said,
this.
hey, the cyber cafe thing,
That won't give me PTSD
you really
whatsoever.
Can't do that. Coming on top of a year of negotiations and torturous negotiations, I think that just struck an angry chord. We ended up filing the lawsuit, but really just on this narrow thing of like, hey, court, will you go just read this language and say, are they outside the license or not? And Vivendi decided to go World War III.
You filed our case in Seattle, federal court in Seattle. And
I never heard this part, actually.
Defended, of course. There was some initial
I know someone
skirmishing
leaked it
about,
online, but I didn't know
discovery.
about
There
this
were some
part. This is-
disputes and motions that had to be decided by the judge, and those went all Valve's way. And then suddenly, the law firm disappeared. They hired a big scary law firm from San Francisco. They thought, okay, Valve's had some success in this case, and so we need to change their mindset from we think we're going to be successful to we're going to be destroyed. The next thing we knew, here comes this big stack of counterclaims, everything from canceling the 2001 agreement, to obtaining ownership of all the Half-Life IP, to keeping us from doing Steam, to you name it, where they one agreement, to obtaining ownership of all the Half-Life IP, to keeping us from doing Steam, to you name it, where they included Scott and Julie Lynch and Gabe and Lisa Newell, his wife at that time.
Yeah, that's the old fucking basement dweller game Newell I remember.
We're gonna put Valve out of business, and then we're gonna bankrupt the two of you. That, I think that was a lot of what they felt like was their path to winning this fight.
They decided that it would have more effect and be scarier if process servers showed up at everybody's house in the night and yeah, a real bullshit move.
It's not a legal strategy. It's basically trying to intimidate you. In other words, they're saying not only are we going to take all this money from the company, but we're going to take money from you personally as well.
What the
I can't think of another case when that happened.
That is
They were
fucked
certainly a
up.
lot bigger than we were. Vivendi was a multinational conglomerate. As compared to us, their funding was infinite. It felt very David versus Goliath.
Publishers at that time in the industry were used to being able to bully developers, right? And so this was really about an assertion of power as much as it was optimizing for a financial outcome. The tactics that they were using were trying to just run us out of money, right? So they knew how much money we were making because they were doing retail distribution of our games. And so they were just trying to crank up our legal costs as just another way of draining resources from the company.
We were protected from that a lot internally, so we didn't have to think about it. They did a pretty good job of letting the team concentrate on what the team could do without worrying about the future of the company so much. I mean, that was my perspective.
So yeah, I definitely was not shielded from that. The lawsuit was something where it's like created all this uncertainty around whether the game's going to come out. Vivendi was definitely trying to
we know what
as
happened,
leverage.
so yeah.
And so even if we finish the game, they're not going to let us release it.
There came a point where Gabe had pretty much used up his liquid assets. And he was like, you know, should I put the house on the market? And I was like, yeah, I think it's the time where you put the house on the market if we want to keep going.
The company was pretty close to going bankrupt. I was pretty close to going personally bankrupt. We went all in.
Jesus.
It's like there was no money left. Like,
how anxious was that for you personally?
I don't know. There's certain things that I'm kind of a weird person in a number of dimensions. Like I don't really think, oh, this is super scary. Like I don't have an emotional response to it. I just say, well, this is what we're doing. This is how, and you know, we'll see how it plays out. So I don't think it was super stressful to me, right? I mean, it didn't really bother me. Like I was diving in South Africa recently, and a shark tried to bite me a couple of times. And the people around me were way more freaked out than I was. I was like, oh, a shark's trying to bite me. I should get away from the shark.
Guess
Whereas
I'll die.
other people were having like, oh, a shark, it's trying to bite somebody.
This is fun.
You know, and I just think that's how I'm wired. I don't think it's anything that speaks to my character or anything. It's like I just seem to not get particularly agitated around risk, which probably means I take on more risk than at times than most sane people would. Which can be a positive, or you can wreck a bunch of other people's lives being in the neighborhood of your risk indifference.
Jesus Christ. Got this in malcompliance.
They're this rigidly structured, you know, organization. Of course, they're going to have this really terse language for everything they do. You know, there's sort of an announcer voice in that follows you around and kind of comments status, essentially, like how alert the world is to you. I sat down and just basically wrote a language for that, so that the soldiers and the Metro cops would have jargon that they would use. Then I just used that to kind of encode. So that's where like anti-citizen one and things like that came from. Rather than saying the guy with the orange suit is causing trouble, You know, it would be, you know, anti-citizen 1 breach, scalpel something, sector something. So I basically just had this little dictionary. Then I overdid it on the vocal processing because they're all wearing these, you know, these masks, and I wanted it to sound like they're in a mask.
And it was very deliberate to never have to like shoot somebody that you can see their face. And like, we didn't want you killing humans. I mean, the Metro cops are humans, but we covered all the faces up. I think it was all part of this calculated and deliberate way of saying, like, look, games don't just have to be a certain way. There's so much room in what we can do here.
Yeah.
Well, the Metro Police and the Combine soldiers share a lot of AI. And so there's an internal communication among them. And one of the things we did, both for the sake of difficulty and exposition,
really looks like a test
was
this looks like a one such as the first half. Like, you know what I mean?
Player at any given time. I think it's
all
two.
the army
So
soldiers
if you have a
they
squad
tried
of
to
four,
kill you.
a guy who has an opportunity to shoot at the player grabs one of those slots if it's available and starts to shoot. And if someone else, another squad member, wants to attack the player but no slots are available, they have to find the next best thing to do, which is I'll get out of the scene for a second, or I'll go reload, or I'll throw a grenade. And that was all stuff that we learned building Half-Life 1, and I think got a lot better at. Half-Life 2 used a node graph system. You know, hand-placed nodes by developers in the levels would describe a really super low
Holy
fidelity
shit, that
version of the
is so
environment that they
hard
had
to
used.
follow.
It enabled the level designers
We have
to
it good nowadays
and
with our game
puppeteer a
engines,
little
but
bit the
Jesus,
AIs
this
in
was
ways
just,
that were just
oh
easier
god.
for them to sort of be
I
in control
can't
as opposed to having
imagine
to grab an
figuring out
animator
a full
or
of
a
that.
programmer to be able to get really cool
That shit
things
we
in the
made
game.
right now. That means we almost stayed halfway there.
Floor is Lava is like a really obvious piece of gameplay. Physics is really fun to manipulate. We just thought like, hey, you know, you could build your own path. You know, we'd already seen players who enjoyed moving stuff around, like building bridges and stuff.
Oh, God.
And, like, we don't have enough moments where like, I just pick up a plank and lay it across a gap and walk across it. Like, obvious stuff. We've barely done that in the whole game.
And the fact that
I wonder how speedruns of that section go actually now that I think about it.
Precise placement
Do you just
wasn't necessary.
not
You're
even
like,
place
you wanna
things
place it
down?
Here. And it doesn't matter where
I'm fascinated now. I want to check that out after this.
And also, like,
am I gonna remember it? Probably not. But yeah, shut it. No,
Down the sand, and I was like, oh, it's Florida
Laszlo, the finest mind of his generation.
couldn't figure that one out.
He tells you exactly how to do it.
Someone's coming. You there! Stop where you are! Stay on the rocks! Don't step on the sand. It makes the antlions crazy. Laszlo, don't move. No. Help!
Ah, shit.
Dear God. Poor Laszlo. The finest mind of his generation. To come to such an end. We were heading for the Vortigaunt camp, hoping to pick up some bug baits of these damn things and leave us alone. But without Laszlo,
Jesus,
what's the point?
You just give these NPCs a name at the moment they die and let the fans fill in their whole life story and give them something to play with.
The free man will have need of these pheropods on the paths ahead. Gather them now.
Nova Prospect and the Antlions with the pheromone balls were really fun because it lets you experience them in a different way, and it was another classic example of getting the most value out of technology investments that people could.
I remember the beach thing. The design intention was definitely to make it feel like a sort of D-Day beach landing. You didn't come from the water, but you're storming up towards these old gun emplacements, if I remember right, with Combine in them, and you're like invading the bunkers, and you're bringing your horde with you. You're overwhelming these in-place defenses. It was surprising how much chaos you could get away with. Like I remember we did a lot of tuning to make sure the antlions spawned. We had difficulties from time to time with like design some choke point or challenge or whatever, and the antlion flow rate wasn't enough to make it feel chaotic enough. Like we had an atmospheric goal too. It
God, I'm
wasn't
having
just about,
struggles just to
mechanically
sit in
being
this
overcome
fucking
this.
chair,
You want
right?
to feel like your forces have stormed the walls. They're everywhere. There's chaos all around you. And so a lot of the tuning was
fucking
about
God's
achieving that
havoc.
feeling, not just about mechanically getting past the enemies that we'd set.
Nova Prospect was different than a lot of the maps that I worked on, at least, is that in that we had some early art prototypes that were done. We have this whole concept of like zoo maps, we call them, which are basically like little art test scenes, how they would fit together, and some basic lighting.
But by the time our cabal got to Nova Prospect, we knew we were coming in with antlions and with bug bait. And so we already knew that a bunch of stuff was going to change because we had to support, you know, you and your army of antlions fighting combat soldiers. Antlions look great.
I can feel I would enjoy this gameplay gimmick if I actually got to it.
Off and, you know, they always look great. And so setting them up against combat soldiers looked great. Setting them up against turrets looked great.
Those were super fun scenarios to work on, though, because having these antlines that you could just use in any way you wanted was really fun. Like, and coming from the coast, like just the contrast of like shrinking everything down and then just piling it full of stuff was a lot of fun.
I get matches though. Is this the next chat? No. I keep asking. I should probably stop asking.
The first time I saw one of those, I think it was Ted Backman's concept. I just thought, I can't believe that I get to use something this cool in level design. These guys are really, really, really fun to use. I remember Kelly Bailey had created a short list, things like he wanted flocking flyers and he wanted a
I wonder if I
guard
could
tower,
review
which was
this
the first
game.
description of the Strider was a
I'm not
mobile
sure
guard
I
tower.
would do it,
So
but
I saw
would
that
be
and
down.
immediately understood that, you know, kind of orchestrating the enemies in that way, trying to get the most variety and the most breadth of shape and movement.
Oh, that is definitely going for the vet. I can now tell.
The design for that first Strider map was something I came up with and I was really passionate about.
That's something he was on like fire or
running
something.
across
Glad
and
it
just
at least
getting,
I'm
like,
around, but
one
still.
shot in your tush.
Kinda concerning.
Right, just as you made it through.
Even just hearing the sound, the thump, thump, thump of them walking, like, you know, okay, there's like a
Holy
boss
shit.
nearby. You just see the legs walking by, but you can't see the body. Like, there are so many things you can do with these guys.
Honestly, there were still people on the team, I think, that were still thinking that we were going to bomb. That people are just going to not be impressed.
When did you know it was going to be good?
E3.
Yep.
E3.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing.
I forgot. I also uploaded the videos of the builds and shit, demonstrating what the hell they were working on. I want to watch that after. No, we didn't. We're gonna be here for long if we do.
It seems like at some point there was an E3 demo that we got together that we didn't end up showing, but at least at that point it just felt like, oh wow, we actually have made something here.
We went through and made a bunch of demos for 2002, and everybody looked at them and was like, we're still not confident about this, and we don't think we've hit the bar, so we're not gonna go at all. Like, they had totally planned to go. And then when 2003 rolled around, I just remember everyone was still terrified. We were like, okay, how are we gonna craft everything we've had into like a number of messages about what this product is? And like, we came up with like the core theme of each one of these movies.
Oh, do be careful.
We didn't really understand at the time, I think, the embarrassment of riches that we had. We looked at it from two angles. One was a set of technical features, a sort of conceptual listing of things that we thought were important, you know, like physics and things like that. And then the other side was content-based. What areas of the game were innovative, what areas of the story we thought were compelling, which characters we thought were
So I'm
worth
morbidly
people paying
curious what the
attention
hell
to.
they're
And so
gonna
it was
do
an
with it.
interesting sort of marriage of which features and
know
which
what?
content
While this is
are
playing,
the
let's
best
show.
showcase
I'm gonna check
for-
real
for all
quick.
those
Did they
things.
have anything?
A lot of what was in the demos was rendering technology, but I think the stuff that
to
felt
find
the
out. Why is it
strongest
still need
to
an
most
update?
of us at the time was really physics-based.
They're really insisting on things. Oh, that's a lot, alright. That's a lot. Is that the Stanley Parable?
Scrapes like wood, floats like wood, and if you shoot it, it'll fragment like wood.
To people at that time, it was pretty mind-blowing just to watch the thing, be able to pick things up, knock other things
Stanley
over,
Parable.
use things in a
Actually,
way
since
that
that's
felt
there, now I'm
true
curious.
to
Can
a
I actually get
three-dimensional
the
reality. Maybe it's on those videos, I
Can I
don't
see
remember,
that?
but people were gasping and
I mean,
you know,
just
hitting the people
sit and
next
do
to them
that.
because they couldn't really believe what they were seeing on the screen.
There's no limitation on the complexity of those interactions. So it's this level of believable and consistent interactivity that opens the door to a wide variety of new gameplay mechanics. This will run on my 486.
486.
You know, that person who was talking about a 486, like obviously it's just about like you must have a supercomputer behind. Like, how are you even doing this? What is going on?
He's so silly. No. And
The lines outside the booth became enormous, and it was the thing that it really distorted the rest of E3 because so many people were anxious to come see our demo.
And I remember seeing this absolutely enormous line with like some pretty well-known people in there, right? Miyamoto was in line for this stuff.
Hey, what?
Will Wright, I think. Yeah, Will Wright. There was a bunch of, and so then like, yeah, after that was all
Okay,
done, like, people on the team
Miyamoto?
were just like, okay, we are.
Now
ready.
I wish
We
to
can
have
ship
like
this
game to the
We
fucking
know,
Wii.
we know we've got something good.
Okay,
It
I
was
know I'm
really
gonna
easy
come
at
to
that
the Wii,
point.
but
Like,
it
it felt like
showed
we were
it.
rolling the ball downhill after
Until it
that.
leaked.
Until it leaked.
Let's get fucking play one more once fuck it. There we go, that's the chapter I was waiting for.
When something like this happens, there's not like a big sign saying you've been hacked and somebody has access. Like, you start off with something that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and you start pulling on that sweater thread.
Gabe's brother had a company called Dingus, and they made wearable computer stuff. So he was kind of winding it down, and he had 1 or 2 Unix servers that hosted the Dingus.com domain name. Unfortunately, they were put inside the firewall and didn't have the latest Linux or whatever security updates on them. And so this kid from Germany was able to sort of exploit his way into that. He sat there for months, I think. He was able to sync the build, all the source code.
I was riffing ideas for, I think in particular, Counter-Strike. That information ended up on one of the internet chat rooms. And only 2 people knew the contents of that email. It was, of course, Gabe and myself. And I went to ITG and said, this could only have come from a leaked email. We got to figure out how that got out there.
But I remember at some point Gabe walking around, you know, like one of those moments like, turn your computer off, something just happened.
Yeah, that's right.
Like I remember the video on my desk and he called me like, turn your computer off, I think we're being hacked. And I was, what? Like, I didn't know what to do. I actually did not know what to do.
I remember coming in that morning and figuring it out, and it just felt like someone had just punched me in the gut.
You know, it's like the bit in movies where, like, after an explosion, they'll have a scene where someone's like staggering around the street, and everyone's like, "What's this mean? Like, can we still keep working on the game? Like, is someone just going to release the whole game tomorrow?"
And I don't know if the guy who hacked it intended to. I think,
he
I
showed
don't
it to
think he
friends.
intended the wide distribution.
He showed it to friends, and then one of his friends posted it somewhere.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's probably the worst feeling ever.
And one of the things I think that's pretty interesting is how much the leak of the game, the hack of our network and the leak of the game, how much that kind of shattered that confidence.
It was like, you know, having a movie that you're working on be spoiled for the world. That's how it felt. Because we knew it would be hard for people to know that that existed and not go look at it all. It looked all broken to us, and it just felt really demoralizing.
Oh man, I was seriously affected by that. I was pretty angry. So I don't know. It kind of affected me for a while. You know, having it called the beta when it was not even close to being a beta. Work in progress. You know, wasn't really ready to be seen yet.
Normally the office is pretty vibrant and loud, and people are riding scooters in the hallway and doing all sorts of stuff. Gabe's tubing throat singing, and it got very still and very quiet. I remember that. That was very eerie. That was the game that was going to make or break the company. We didn't know if we were going to have to go find jobs.
Not only did it show everybody that we were not anywhere near where we said we would be, but all the work that we had in progress, all the plans that we were making were just laid out bare. And so a lot of us just thought, oh, we're toast. We've worked so hard. Are we going to go bankrupt? And then all that while Scott Lynch and Gabe were being sued by Sierra, their wives delivered subpoenas. And so it was this super dark time.
So there were 2 interesting threads going on. One was, traditional law enforcement and intelligence agencies, and they were doing their thing and issuing subpoenas and seizing devices. And then we asked our community to help us out. And I think Axel Gembe started to realize that he was being tracked down by the community, right? Everything was being, essentially, it was an open source investigation. So you could see that they were getting closer, and that's when he reached out to me. Of course, I was insanely furious with him, but we ended up running this sort of scheme with him where I was like, oh, wow, you must be really good at security issues. We should have you come out and interview. And the FBI was going to arrest him when he got off the plane.
And then apparently the German police sweep in right as he's about to leave because it turns out he's also guilty of a bunch of bank fraud and bank hacking.
He had hacked into a bunch of huge companies over there as well, and so they were already well aware of him.
How much it harmed us financially, or like how much the success of the game was harmed by that, very debatable. You know, so it was hard for us to go through internally, but in the end, I wouldn't have wanted to have it be a whole like law enforcement debacle after that. It just, yeah, it wouldn't have really helped anyone.
And I'm not saying we should ever be lax about security, but like if we could survive that, like maybe, you know, we'll survive anything, because at the end of the day, the special sauce was everything that happened between the moment of that leak and when we actually shipped. And if you look at that version of the game, it's just so not what the final game ended up being. And so even if our competition had all the source code and that executable, they're still not able to produce Half-Life 2 from it because the company kept moving forward, and the company was the interesting special sauce.
Yes. Oh, what's this the part I'm thinking of? Are we getting the boy? Building pressure. There's a lot of pressure behind this game. There's so much pressure behind so many game development stories.
He
It's
had
just
kind
so
of a concept
crazy.
sketch of an idea in his head of what would become Steam, but it was clear that Team Fortress Classic and
we're
Blade
building
Counter-Strike,
Steam, baby.
It was fundamentally the thing that we were really attracted to was our ability to ship content directly to our customers. I mean, there was a set of business
Fucking
goals
building
that
up
ended
Steam.
up being part of Steam, but fundamentally it was a bunch of game development goals that it was servicing that were so attractive to us.
It was a very weird time. Like, I don't think people understand how many times we would go to people and say, no, you will be able to distribute software over the internet, and have people just say, no, it will never happen. I'm not talking about one or two people. I mean, like 99% of the companies we talked to said it will never happen. Your retail sales force will never let it happen. But also people would say users aren't going to want, right? People want physical copy. Like, there were so many bad faith arguments that were being made. Retail sales is not the goal, right? It's actually an impediment that it's somebody who sits between you and the customer.
And we ended up going out to finding this company called Applied Microsystems. So we ended up hiring most of the original Steam team from that other company to build initially this sort of in-game advertising streaming model, but then there was the epiphany that, hey, it's just bits. Why don't we just download whole games this way? You guys go off and do it.
The decision to not only use Steam to ship Half-Life 2, but actually to require Steam, even in the versions that were purchased at retail in a box, was the most interesting decision of all those, because it turned out to be an incredibly important decision for the future of the company. And a lot of us were nervous, and a lot of the people who had been at Valve for a long time, since the very beginning, were the most nervous about that decision. And so it was one of the rare exceptions to our decision-making process usually, and Gabe had to really step in and say, no, actually, we're doing it this way.
And then we got the thing that takes my money and also gets a lot of money.
Which meant that, you know, by the time you go home at night.
And I accept it. I am a Steam Deck glazer. I will glaze it all day or day.
Making the game work on multiplayer, right? You know, mostly just working on prediction, like what would it feel like to have a gravity gun on a multiplayer setting, right? Getting physics objects to work. You know, it was just curiosity. Scott Dalton saw me working on it. And he's like, I'll make a map, and then we play. Put the map up, we started playing in the office in between, you know, builds of Half-Life 2, like playtest. And I remember Gabe walking by my desk. And I remember him going
That's
like,
a lot of stories
and I
these
said,
guys
it's
have.
Half-Life
That's
multiplayer.
fucking...
And he's like, show it to me tomorrow. And he just walked away.
I think that is one of the advantages of.
It's so funny. A lot of these stories from Half-Life and Half-Life 2's development just sounds like Gabe's walked by and he's like, hey, that was pretty neat.
At the same time, at that point,
yeah, show it to me.
Trust in Half-Life 2 for the fact that it's
funny.
built upon an engine that's designed to do multiplayer. But it means that when you get to this later point where you start asking, well, can we build multiplayer deathmatch out of this? Like, the code's all sort of built upon a fundamentally a client-server sort of foundation.
Definitely the most entertaining thing that you could throw at somebody that happened to be scattered around the world was picking up a toilet and hurling it at someone's head, and then having that show up in the upper right corner of your screen with name, toilet name, was very satisfying.
I was also selfishly trying to get.
Now that I think about it, yeah, that would be funny
so
to.
then we can release a tool.
Okay, not stream, but like just do it.
Like even like mod makers could just
grab a
immediately start
toilet
making
in
multiplayer
something
game,
like Gmod
mods,
or some shit.
rather than
that
waiting for
just
us to do it or
fucking yeet
someone else to pick it up.
We were so heads down working on what we worked on, and we didn't really get a chance to play the train station.
I remember that was one of the lessons that came away from Half-Life 1 is like, we need to be building these games backwards in a sense. The first thing we're going to put in front of people is the thing we built when we're as good as we can be at it. You know, we know our tools and things like that. And a lot of the anxiety over, are we building a good game, was behind us. And I felt really confident, yeah, we're building a really good game.
Yes, you are. That got a lot of praise. Captain, wait, really? Goddamn, we moved through here quick. Damn. I'm an efficient squirrel. At the same time, not really.
The Gare d'Austerlitz. And this train station is very important because it's one of the main inspirations for the train station of City 17.
Yeah.
Where the player starts.
God, I want to take one of these trains one day because it looks like it'd be a nice little. I want to take a train in general.
Who did the Eiffel Tower? Is that there's
I haven't done plane either.
station in Budapest.
And the train would be
The
nice.
last bit we worked on, right? And we always want to build the start of the game late, as late as we can, because we understand our game at that point.
In general, the train station was a really interesting problem because it was basically one big choreo sequence intended to deliver atmosphere and story and background and sort of set your expectations for the world.
We let the level designers, who were really good at this stuff, figure out what was a good experience. And then we were kind of always there to provide dialogue, acting, stuff like this guy.
I think it was pretty clear, too, that we wanted to provide incentive to the player at this point about how people were being mistreated, about how bad the situation was here, and kind of start to trigger that righteous indignation early.
All this stuff is fun to look at, but you just assume it doesn't move and you can't interact with it, you can't pick it up. Because all the stuff we're going to do later with the gravity gun and everything, like, first we got to start just mundane stuff like that food, you know, that little empty bit of food.
I mean, it happens like the moment you leave the train, the
I
wind
should
comes and blows
do
all the trash
that.
away.
Doing it everywhere.
You can see the vortigon
sweeping
sweeping. So like, guy pushing it on the case, on the
and all those
suitcases.
things fall off.
Yeah,
and you
so
can
like,
pick those up and.
we were like, if it
Casually
doesn't have to
just
be bolted down.
Start
Make
with
sure it
like
gets
the
knocked
later
over.
half and then work on the starting half
Looks
later.
vaguely familiar. There's something about the way he walks.
It's like a beer drinker.
Who would have thought Barney has the capacity to go undercover, right? Like that seemed to be, you know, above his pay grade, above his intelligence pay grade from the get-go.
Look at that beautiful animation. But where'd his hat go? It's gone. Something is not right here. Magical combine tech.
We were trying to figure out how to get people to figure out how to pick up things and do things.
It's really interesting watching these also because technically speaking, I get like some things on what I could try to make.
And at some point,
Okay, making games with the 1% of the time I do it much more easier. Or at least have some personal control about you to make the game work.
I just found it just an immensely satisfying piece of like a storytelling and world setting. You know, we got to use our physics tools and the choreo tools and all of those things blended together into this very simple, clean moment.
Now they'll pick up the can, you gotta throw it at the coat.
While it's teaching you how to manipulate objects, it's also telling
You
you something about the
bitch,
combat
no.
themselves and the Metro Cops,
And your relationship.
right? Yeah, so like it was a twofer, right? We got those two at the same time.
Physics is going to be a big part of our game. By the time you left train station as a player, like you understood that and you come to appreciate it because we couldn't wait until you got to Ravenholm before you found out how awesome physics is. If you'd had any kind of weapon, I think they would have had to kill you. And we found the longer we sort of held that away from ourselves, the more we were forced to come up with stuff that was still entertaining that you could do. Like the raid is a whole, you know, in the tenements, there's a whole thing that could work because the player could only run.
We don't very often force the player into a very specific set of actions. That's one of the few times that we had to learn to really corral the player, and I think it ended up being pretty successful. Like, I think the consequences for sort of not following on a clear path were quick and efficient.
Get in here, quick! Keep moving, head for the roof!
So when you build a world, I start with the infrastructure. What's really interesting for me is what is not visible to the tourist, which is the courtyard, the backyard, the shafts, and the smokestacks, and the wires. And every city has this whole, existence. And you know, people are
Man, you
blind.
fucking nailed that looking goddamn Half-Life, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it came.
I should seen that game, but I realized my PC can't handle that game for
Very
shit.
familiar with all that, the look and feel. You know, there was certain patterns and certain, iconic shapes that anybody who lived there could pick up on. You know, they're like, oh yeah, my grandmother had that dress, or whatever. And my parents are from Argentina, and so they have that kind of sensibility. But a lot of it came down to the reference gathering, which was from Bulgaria, from Paris.
We have these buildings that again have back courtyards. They have big staircases. They have cellars, attic spaces, cellar spaces, and the apartments have big windows and thick walls. So this was providing already a lot of context for people who can hide in these apartments.
Yeah.
Stop! We didn't do anything!
Yeah, damn.
They'll be looking for you now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I remember that we wanted to have the player see proof that the Combine were evil people, not that they were gray in any way, that they were objectively the bad guys. And then we had it to where you go upstairs, and then we really
it's factually
intentionally framed the reveal of the world to where you see the Citadel front and center, and it's clearly in an alert state.
The four of us, the City 17 Cabal,
Oh,
we've done
God.
City 17, which is a bunch of hard
I
problems.
never really took
We've
that
done,
much time to
Ravenholm, which is a
develop
different set of hard
that,
problems.
actually. What?
We were like, I don't know, 4 months from trying to lock down the game or something. I mean, it was really late. I may have the dates wrong, but it was really late. And there was a bunch of gameplay that was in there that hadn't really received a lot of like development.
We were coming from working with pretty much every tool in the game in C-17 to going back to basically you have a pistol and metric ops. Not much, really. So John Guthrie and I absolutely love exploding barrels. So
Yeah,
we just used them
that is pretty
absolutely
fun, though.
everywhere we could. You set them up. We loved ragdoll magnets and physics. It's just one of my favorite tools. It's basically you have a point in space that when a character dies, they turn into a ragdoll, and then you have a ragdoll magnet that says, okay, if there is any ragdoll in this radius, pull towards me, and then you can give it a strength. And so if somebody dies in an especially dramatic location, you can have an especially dramatic death. And we just use that absolutely everywhere. I mean, you can use it to just pull someone directly down. So in that bridge, the train bridge, I put magnets directly beneath their feet, so it looks like they just, like the planks beneath their feet broke and they just fell directly down. I mean, they died from a broken plank, which doesn't make any sense, but they looked pretty cool. It was so orchestrated, I guess, because we didn't want it to, like, we didn't really have a lot of time to have a lot of bugs come out of it.
Is this the epilogue?
You know, our
Oh,
team was the
yeah.
one that did the Citadel.
No,
You know, I said
yeah,
that there
not
was
yet.
multiple passes on the product over the course of the thing. Well, Citadel had almost no pass. And we were thinking about Street War, and we were like, well, we just had like this incredibly intense, you know, Strider fight. How are we gonna outdo that, especially when we only got a month to do this thing? We then came up with the idea of like, well, what if we made this just be your god, and this is the reward? You've won the game. Enjoy. We're gonna like break all the rules and let you be god for a little bit.
Picking up the enemies as ragdolls and throwing them around really came out of that development tool, because you could pick them up and move them around, and people are like, I don't know, that's pretty fun. Why can't we do that in the game?
It was either a week or a day. It was incredibly quick. I had every single mechanic of the Citadel mocked up. The Combine ball was actually a very, very heavy watermelon that would bounce around and eventually break up.
Yeah,
I had spikes in the wall that you could skewer them on. We had electric fields that you could throw them in. We had the zero-G fields that they would get stuck in. And we had ripping off the machines off the walls. All that stuff all came together within an incredibly short period of time, just a couple days. Very shortly after that, people were like, you know, we were having a real hard time with the AR2's alt fire. So maybe we'll just steal this because it's kind of cool and we'll bring it earlier in the game. Game development never does this. It never like just materializes out of nothing in that short a time and is just something everybody's excited and happy about. And it just, it felt really good to be a part of that.
Here we go. This is epilogue, right? Yeah, okay. I want to know what the hell happened to this lawsuit.
I started working on trying to find another source of funding to keep Valve going. I started working on a deal with a big publisher that was for Counter-Strike 2. So we're right there, ready to sign. We're really kind of running on fumes at that point, and then get a phone call, and they're like, yeah, we changed our mind, we're not doing the deal. You know, I remember one conversation with Gabe, which is like, he was like, so how fucked are we? And I was like, well, we're kind of screwed. We could probably reformat everything that we're doing, but it means we'd lay off people. And we still had the huge uncertainty of what is going to happen in the lawsuit. Immediately started chasing another publisher and were able to get a deal done with another publisher for Counter-Strike 2.
Yeah.
We got the deal done.
Oh, that's a good knife. How about that?
And as the deal gift for the parties, he built a knife that was inscribed Counter-Strike 2. And so the deal structure was, after we ship Half-Life 2, if you decide that you don't want to keep moving forward, then you can just decide to terminate the deal and we'll pay the money back. That ended up happening. So maybe a good choice because it took us a long time to ship Counter-Strike 2. So that we got done.
You guys seem to really have a lot of development difficulties after this game out.
The Vendi figured out that
or at least Advanced Force 2's existence, which is Half-Life 2's existence.
Trying to figure out how did that happen, because it was clearly part of their strategy was, you know, running us out of money.
But what we decided was, hey, let's focus on the real nub of this and the thing that's going to lead
that
to
looks
a
fucking cool. I wish I had
Getting
that.
The judge to decide that we were right about the cyber cafe business, and also to decide that we were right that if you were distributing these properties without a license, that's copyright infringement. You know, we had asked for information about what they were doing in Asia, including Korea, and they, I think, to try to make our lives more difficult, produced a big chunk of documents in Korean, that were in Korean. I mean, everything from email to contracts to you name it.
And one of the things they were doing is just dumping huge amounts of discovery on it to force us to go and just have somebody go and look through it. It's like, oh, look, they ordered sandwiches again, right? It has nothing to do with the lawsuit. It's just an attempt to overwhelm us with tens of millions of pages of documents on the assumption that there's nothing in it that will be particularly problematic for their case. That will eventually just we'll either spend a bunch of money, which plays into their hands, or we'll just eventually give up because it's finding a needle in the haystack. And then we found the needle in the haystack, and that changed things quite dramatically.
Indeed.
It just so happened that there was an
that
intern,
camera shot's
summer
fucking awesome.
associate who was
that's
a
basic
native
shit.
Korean speaker. And I said, Andrew, hey, can you look at this pile here and can you just tell me what's in there?
I would guess that particular intern probably went through a couple thousand documents that day, and only one was consequential.
And they said, well, there's these other emails between these vice presidents where one says something like, hey, we destroyed those Valve documents like you asked. And I said, are you sure it says that? And I said, yeah, that's what it says. And so, of course, that led to a conversation between me and the lawyer for the other side about, hey, It looks like your guys are destroying evidence. What's up with that? They go back to, "You're out of your mind. Whoever translated doesn't know what they're talking about."
It's just gonna end in such a comedic
"Well, looks like
way."
we're gonna have a kind of a fight about this. Are you? We're going to need an affidavit from you about your translation. Can you tell me a little bit about your Korean skills? He goes, "Well, I'm a native speaker. At UCLA, I majored in Korean language studies." And I said, "That's good. That sounds like we're in good shape."
The assistant general manager in Korea sending the letter to the general manager of Korea saying, "I have destroyed those documents related to the Valve case as directed," which I think is one of Carl's happiest moments as a lawyer in his entire career. Just like stuff like this never, ever happens.
I did a lot of lawsuits for a long time. I never saw anything like that. Never. Maybe there was document destruction that couldn't be proved, but that was like, we're talking about it in writing. I'd never seen that before.
At that point, Judge Zilli said, "All matters of fact are now, according to Valve, you don't get to contest any of those. Now we're just discussing how much you're going to have to pay and what the damages are."
And Gabe was still
Man,
pretty
imagine
mad.
watching that fucking.
He was mad. He really didn't want to settle. He was mad enough that he wanted to keep going. But I remember sitting down with Carl and
Imagine
having a
just
conversation
watching the
with
Netflix
Carl,
thing,
and
thinking
I
you're
was
gonna
like,
get
"So
some
Carl, what do
quality
you think?
content.
Should
That's
we
not
settle
me.
at this
I
point?
needed
Is
to look at the actual.
the right number?" And he was like, "Well, there's this old saying, there's a difference between
fuck
being a
did you
pig.
say?
What do you think? Should we settle at this point? Is the right number?" And he was like, "Well,
okay.
there's this old saying, there's a difference between being a pig and a hog."
Carl was done with the deposition, and that was the only question I asked him to ask that particular witness was, "Is Half-Life 2 being replicated and shipped to retailers?" He said yes. And that the relief was, hey, no matter what, at least the game's going to get out to people, which is kind of that's a pretty unusual way to find out from your publisher that they're shipping your game to retail.
Yeah, that was a great fucking.
I've been thinking about this for the last few days, and what if there was one thing that I can point to that made us successful over that development period? And I think that it was really this culture that Gabe created, where we were hiring people that were senior enough to be managers, but also passionate enough to still be individual contributors. They were willing to stake their credibility and their name on these big features, and sometimes spend years working on those features.
Yeah, and it was like 6-7 days a week, 10 to 14 hours a day.
I'm still laughing at that. You fucking leave that shit the people.
18 months at least. But a lot of good memories though. I mean, everyone in that room has such great sense of humor. Like we knew each other's sense of humor. We trusted each other, respected each other enough that like we could rib each other without stepping on each other's toes and stuff, and it just worked pretty well.
It was just bigger, more pressure, but and I think that seriousness, in some ways, there's still humor, but that seriousness kind of infuses into the game. You feel it's a heavy
That
game.
encapsulates the Valve vibes, I think.
I can think of.
It's
at
a
scale,
train,
every
a
time it's
train,
come, the whole company was just aligned and got it done.
Back on this experience, and it was a really hard time, but I feel super grateful because we were supported to make the very best game that we possibly could, and given the time to do it, we're going to ship it when it's done, even when we made unreasonable promises about when that might be in advance. And it was also at a time before the game industry was quite as specialized as it is now, where people got to wear multiple hats and contribute in all of these different ways. So it was a rare life experience, and I'm really grateful to have been part of it.
Epilogue. The episodes. Oh my god.
The fallout of Half-Life 2 shipping was the realization that we can't we can't do 6-year-long bet the whole company bets over and over again. And if we get it wrong one time, we're a big crater in the ground, as Gabe would say. And so we started to think about episodic releases.
The first idea when they pitched it to us, like, we're going to do this episode of content. We'll do one every how much? 12 months.
Yeah, we were going to have like
One a
alternating
year.
teams coming
Yeah.
out every year and a half, something like that.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, this is neat. But then, yeah, it just got out of hand.
So when they decided to start playing with episodic content, the promise for me that I felt was we can build smaller pieces, denser pieces faster, and we know what we're doing. We're going to be really good at this.
So a lot of it was like, you know, do more with less, like keep a bunch of the existing stuff and retweak it to make some new interesting scenario. Like probably the biggest real new thing for episode 1 as far as technology was just having Alex with you throughout the entire thing and having her behave in a way that was believable and fun. You know, she's with you for a few distinct parts in Half-Life 2, but they're always pretty heavily scripted and not really in combat. Having her there and able to actually be a useful companion, so there's a lot of little tricks that we did to try to make that as fun as possible for players. She doesn't have supernatural knowledge. She's not like just finding things without you lighting them up. But like if you throw a flare out or you look at them with the flashlight, it's like, okay, she's gonna go for that target because she can see it.
We were like cranking on that, and it took forever. Like we were not just partying, hanging out.
No, I was pretty much crunched that whole project. I think.
Yeah, we were crunch mode. And then same thing with episode 2.
We started at the same time as
And
episode 1, and so we ran for an extra year.
Okay,
that
no, we're
way,
not gonna get
which
into
allowed
that.
us to stretch. And
You know, if we do, it's
more.
not going to be that
So
substantial.
hunters were initially something that we wanted to have a more sort of frenetic pursuit.
If it does end up being the case,
built
I'm
into
going to be
the design of
shot
the
by the...
character.
Oh,
So
God.
it was really focused on, at the time, creating a creature that could follow the player into more types of spaces.
One of the questions was, how do we keep Alex out of your way during this really intense, high-action scene where the player has agency to make whatever decision they want about where they want to be inside the house and that sort of thing. And that's when we got the idea to have her sort of camp out by a window, and she would fire out the window and let you know if she saw any hunters or soldiers out that window. And if the player started to spend time at that window, she would find another one to go be at.
I mean, so Dario Casali was trying to create this final fight in episode 2.
The Striders always reminded me of AT-ATs in Empire Strikes Back. And of course, we wanted something fresh because just rocketing a ton of Striders wasn't going to be a bit repetitive after a while. So that's when we started collaborating, talking about the Magnuson device and the hunters and how would those all come together to make this sort of an overwhelming 25, 30-minute battle set piece.
Ah, damn, I wish I did that before.
Hunters, and to a lesser extent the Strider, are all secretly in cahoots to create this tension, because what we always wanted was gotten the Magnuson device on the last guy.
That's so fucking
It's
awesome.
going to be destroyed, and then boom, you hit it, so that when everyone comes out running, you really feel heroic.
You have the car and you have a big space and you're not guided anyway. You have to go and take care of this threat in a way that you think is best. I think it pays off. It makes the player feel like, I did this myself. I wasn't guided by a level designer at all, because we give them so many options, right? You can kill the hunters with driving the car into them. You can pick up a log and throw at them. You can pick up a Magnuson device and throw it too soon, and they'll shoot it down. You have to learn, I have to kill the hunters first. You can use rockets to kill the hunters. You have options, and you have time and you have space, but we dial the tension and the pacing up pretty slowly over time.
Yeah. That's how we
It is
build
pretty
it.
cool, all the kind of cinematic destruction
This is how
stuff
they
that
build
happens
it.
in there.
It was
I
so
mean,
hideously fake.
I said I'll
because
have a
basically
little
we would send
tension
a Strider who
properly.
would do that sort of the low scuttling run, and he would just sit there and wait, just staring at this building until the player could see the Strider plus the
until it was
building.
framed up
He would
correctly.
literally sit there forever.
That's funny.
But we dial the tension and the pacing up pretty slowly over time. the playtests we like the most is when the Strider's, he's getting ready to shoot the rocket, and then the last Magnuson device goes off, and then he's done.
Dang.
Nice one, Freeman. We did it. We held them off.
Like, people were failing left and right, and the team was calling for the map to be cut.
Wow, yeah, I took a lot of heat for that.
And
both of us did.
Yeah, we had to see it through.
We were going to do an arc of 3, of course, because that's just how you think of stories in those terms. And then you want the high point to come at the end of the second one. And Gabe at one point saying, "Who's the important character you're going to kill?" I'm like, "Lamar is going down. This is going to be it." Like, I want episode 2 to end with Lamar floating into space and like everyone cries. And Gabe's like, "That's not good enough."
Well, do it.
A lot of that was an experiment on like, what's the right amount of episode. Episode 2 was longer than episode 1 and bigger, and people liked that better. But
it also took longer.
It took longer to make, and people didn't like it as much as they liked Half-Life or Half-Life 2 kind of scope, right?
Yeah.
So by saying episode, are we solving a lot of problems here, or are we just making a sideways trade-off? I think that's maybe the way I felt about it.
Even into episode 3, I still don't know what that would have been if we'd built it, because it hadn't been built.
Guess
That
we gotta
was
talk about it.
the feeling of excitement of something I can't even imagine is going to happen as a team. I was not like imposing like a top-down, this is what we must do to tell our very important tale. It's more like, oh, we have new features? Like, how do we use, what kind of story can we do with these now?
Well, I worked on episode 3, and I was working on this gun called the ice gun that basically let you create
footage?
amorphous shapes out
Probably
of ice. So you could like raise a little ice wall in front of yourself. It would be attached to the floor, and then the Combine soldiers could shoot holes in it, and it would shatter and break like kind of like glass, I guess. So that was the primary mode of you could build ledges for yourself to get down, cliff faces. It had another mode that was like kind of like a Silver Surfer mode where you would extrude the ice in front of yourself and then run along it and use it to cross gaps.
I think that would
over
actually
chasms and
work.
things like that. What else do we have? It was
It
set
balanced
in
a bit
the
more,
Arctic
but
'cause
still.
it was around Borealis.
I remember the little blobby, squishy.
Oh yeah. Brian was working on the blobs. So we had the ISO surfaces that we ended up using in Portal for the paint. So we had that as an enemy. It was a blob enemy, and it could change its shape, and you could choreograph its shapes with some content tools. And then it could also split into little hoppy blobs that could, they were almost like little head crabby things, but they were little splats that would hop around. And we were doing all kinds of stuff with that. It could pass through grates.
You could get more gameplay out of something where you had maybe a couple of creatures with simpler behaviors.
Oh, yeah.
And then you would spend time combining them with other game mechanics.
Story was never the boss
I
of
wonder if a
anything.
new Half-Life
It
game
was
would have the
always,
blob.
we
I
worked
think
on a
we have
peer-to-peer
technology
thing.
that could
We were all
handle a
gonna-
blob now.
What can we do? What do you think would be cool?
I would like
It was
a
still
blob.
a collection of like playable levels in no particular
Not
order.
taking easy
and
enough
a
to
collection
just
of story
shoot.
beats
No,
and
just
story
like
concepts and
add some
we were
sort
still,
of thing.
like,
Have it
probably
be
another 6
invincible
months
and
we
then
would
have it
critical
die at
mass
one
of,
point. Like have it scripted.
mechanics. And then
Oh,
start
one time
putting
at least,
them
I
in,
think.
in a timeline.
I think that would
think
work.
probably a year and a half.
That's how I would handle it
easily.
anyway.
Depending on how ambitious we got, could have been, 2.5 more years. Yeah. Probably.
It's hard to be a lot less than 2 years.
Yeah, I think we were 6 months in on it when we moved to Left 4 Dead. I don't know, we were moving at a pretty brisk pace too.
I thought that we needed to go much bigger on episode 3 or do something
And now
else
you
because
are
I don't know if this is
here.
the right way to describe it, but element fatigue. I think we had really explored a lot of what made sense in the Half-Life universe and setting.
Arcane was building the Ravenholm game, and even they were having trouble doing cool new stuff with this tool set. And like, if those guys can't figure out a bunch of cool stuff to do with this, I think we're running out of fuel.
Episode 3's coming along. What's the new big thing here? It's got to be bigger than all the stuff we just did. You know, even episode 2, and it's like, oh my God, you know, it just becomes.
Are we allowed to cry in this documentary? That's what I want to know.
Left 4 Dead
That's
needed,
why you said that before.
Kind of an all-hands-on sort of an effort to ship. And so we.
That's fucking awesome. I want that.
And it was a really.
I want
tight
one of those
shipping
statues.
schedule.
Oh my God, those
Required
are
a lot of work from
those
everybody
are so
to get
detailed.
out
I
the
want to
door.
buy that.
And it was worth it. I mean,
Now,
Left 4 Dead,
please, I'll
Left 4 Dead
give you
came out
money
great.
for the figures.
But it took long enough, and this is the
There are
tragic
they statues.
and
If so, I don't think I
comical
could
thing
own a
about it is
statue.
It took long enough that then by the time we considered going back to episode 3, the argument was made like, well, we missed it. It's too late now, you know, and we really need to make a new engine and, you know, to continue the Half-Life series and all that. And now that just seems, in hindsight, so wrong.
Yeah.
You know, we could have definitely gone back and spent 2 years to make episode 3.
And you can't
Probably.
get lazy and say, oh, we're moving the story forward. That's copping out of your obligation to gamers, right? Yes, of course they love the story. They love many, many aspects of it. But sort of saying that your reason to do it is because people want to know what happens next. You know, we could have shipped it. Like, it wouldn't have been that hard.
Yeah.
You know, the failure was, my personal failure was being stumped. Like, I couldn't figure out why doing episode 3 was pushing anything forward.
But yeah, I mean, some of those people.
This is such an
made Left 4 Dead 2
interesting. I'm
and
surprised they
Portal
done
2.
this.
Yeah,
Done
we
it
did
to
other
episode
things
3.
instead.
It's not.
Guess
like
I fucking jinxed
that
it.
choice would have been free.
Right.
In terms of the players, like they may have gotten that and not.
And given up something
not something
else.
else. Yeah. So it's hard to say.
But a lot of us have been doing Half-Life for 8+ years.
We saw a bunch of really compelling reasons to go explore more multiplayer-based projects too, because not only just what customers were doing, but internally, you know, we found ourselves wanting to play a lot of multiplayers.
It sounds silly to say it because we're a relatively big company that has a bunch of stuff, but we're not that many people. There's 300 something people here, and so we're working on a bunch of different projects, and it's like, you know, people are passionate about Portal, people are passionate about TF, people are passionate about Left 4 Dead and Half-Life and CS.
What I
and
would have given
Dota,
to give me another Left 4
Deadlock.
Dead game.
I mean, there's a lot of things there, and you know, I also work on our hardware, so I've worked on Steam Deck and the original Steam controller and a tiny bit on VR. Unfortunately, for any decision we make, somebody is going to be unhappy, but hopefully we're making a bunch of people happy with the choices we do make.
If it weren't for the
What
episodes,
I
there'd
would
be no
have
such
given
thing as
to
do
get
it. And I know
another
that
Left
sounds
4
really
Dead
weird,
game.
but it was the things that we learned in developing the episodes that led to, you know, Team Fortress, to more rapid updates.
I think everybody that worked on Half-Life misses the working on that thing, but it's also hard not to be like, man, I've seen every way that you can fight an antlion or you know, whatever, and so you want to, like, you know, get some space away from it until you can come back to it with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
It was easy to think about VR being a vehicle for Half-Life because that was a big technological innovation and kind of a core reason for that product's existence. And I think, like, one of the things we have internally
gotta say,
tended
though,
to attach to the Half-Life IP is
I think this is
innovation.
relatively one of
Gameplay
the
innovation
peak
is often
VR
times
games
enabled
out
by
there.
a technological innovation.
And people
Clearly,
could
there was a
argue
ton in Half-Life 1
RE4, and
and 2.
yeah, that's a pretty good one, but
and so, yeah,
I
it's,
don't know, there's just so much depth in that one. And it's the best in terms of getting you fucking sweaty as
The ending
shit
of Half-Life
because
Alyx
you
is
have to do a
somewhat
lot of IRL
self-critical
shit
realization. So that
to
was
even
super
get
satisfying.
good.
All credit to the people who are
And you
specifically
got
involved in
also,
that decision and those
you
steps of design.
do
I
shit
think
like
that
crouch and all
Half-Life
that.
represents
It's
a tool
just
we have
very in depth.
and promises made to customers to
And the
capitalize
very,
on
very, 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 very
innovation
fair
and
1%
opportunities
chance of
to
Valve employees
build
watching,
game
I
experiences
salute
that
you, my
haven't
friend,
been
for
involved
making
previously. And I
Half-Life
think
Alyx.
that there are no shortage of those opportunities facing us as an industry right now.
Yeah, it's so weird. Oh, really? You don't talk about the new update? Huh. Well, that was the thing. serious? Are you fucking serious? My fucking mic was... I hate Windows updates so much. I'm gonna bitch about this real quick. Every time I update my Windows, it disconnects my mic from everything, and it's annoying. Please, Microsoft, don't disconnect my mic when I update. Okay? Anyways, yeah, I'm gonna just leave. That was a fun little binge. See? Yeah. This was a very late night stream, Jesus. Is the answering good?